I'm not sure if anybody can hear me yet, but I'm joining by phone for the first little while.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. I figured I better try it soon. Early, I mean, so in case there was any issues, problems.
Okay, I will call the meeting to order as a continuation or to resume the committee of the whole meeting from November 5th. And I will note that we have 100% attendance with Councillor Mackay attending virtually at this time until he can make it back. I'd ask one of my fellow, or we don't need no, we'll just start with the continuation. I don't believe we have any public input this afternoon. So with that, I will move it over to through CAO Bill Fletcher to start our portfolio overviews for this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And so just as a reminder for everybody, this is day 2 of the functional presentation. So yesterday we covered Council, Office of the CAO, as well as corporate and emergency services quite broadly. Today we'll carry on with 2 functional areas, really kind of 3 functional areas. My apologies. Planning and infrastructure, public operations, and then utilities is a separate component. And so those will be 3 distinct elements. Obviously, subject to the mayor chairing the meeting, questions, would be appreciated specific to those elements as they come up. But if there's anything left over from yesterday, anything that arises, obviously we've got, as yesterday, executive leadership and the director of finance, and sorry, what's your title, Suzanne? Manager of Awesomeness, or what are you? Manager of Financial Services as well, off to the left, and all the directors are online to answer quite any questions you may have. And so, barring any further issues, I'll turn it over to Mr. Slatt, Managing Director of Planning and Engineering. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So today we'll continue our portfolio budget presentations with the Planning and Infrastructure Services portfolio. As I've indicated during the onboarding, the portfolio includes 3 departments: the Economic Development Department, Engineering Services Department, and the Planning and Development Department. These departments work closely together to manage the city's growth and sustainability. Economic development drives economic growth and increases the financial sustainability and community prosperity in St. Albert by enhancing the competitiveness of local businesses, attracting and securing new investment, and informing economic decision-making. Engineering services stewards the city's infrastructure, which enables connectivity and growth while adhering to professional standards and regulations. Their customers can expect a high level of service and high quality, sustainable infrastructure through collaboration. The department provides engineering services covering a wide variety of areas of specialization, including the city's transportation network, infrastructure and asset management, servicing and urban development, and corporate project management. Our planning and development team ensures that St. Albert grows in a safe, responsible, and sustainable manner. The planning branch manages land use in the city, including long-range planning, reviewing subdivision applications, formulating land use plans and policies, and conducting public consultations on proposed land use changes. The branch also provides mapping and addressing functions and affordable housing initiatives. The development branch administers the permitting and compliance certificate process, as well as ensuring building and renovation design meets the high-quality standards expected in the city of St. Albert. The Building Inspection Services branch oversees the physical construction of all structures within St. Albert, ensuring building safety and code compliance. This slide, also on page 90 of the proposed budget, shows the overall impact of the 2026 proposed budget as compared to the 2025 revised budget. This is only for planning and development and engineering services, as the economic development budget was included in Ms. McMorty's general government presentation yesterday. The net impact is an increase of $94,000 and is mainly a result of, on the revenue side, an $80,000 increase in penalties and costs due to the recovery of credit card charges in 2026, an $88,000 increase in licenses and permits consistent with rate increases offset by trending decrease in compliance certificates, and a $65,000 decrease in transfers to from reserves due to council-approved gravel parking lot standards update in 2025. And on the expense side, There is a $162,000 increase in salaries, wages, and benefits due to annualization of salary costs and approved 2025 full-time employees. There are 4 operating budget requests from the portfolio. The asset management program implementation consulting request for $60,000 is being recommended to continue work on this multi-year project. The requested 2026 funds will address the development of the asset management strategy and strategic asset management plan and much required documents as part of the asset management framework to guide each asset group in developing the tactical asset specific plans. The growth infrastructure engineer request for $105,500 is being recommended to fund a position that will act as the central hub for growth-related engineering reviews across all stages of development, addressing the capacity constraint experienced due to increased volume and complexity of reviews across different technical teams. The Lakeview Neighborhood Plan request for $300,000 is being recommended to allow for the acceleration of development for the Lakeview Business District. This one-time request is being recommended to be funded from the stabilization reserve. The project engineer request for $87,400 is being recommended to fund a position that supports both engineering, transportation, and the capital projects group, and is required due to capacity constraints to maintain the service level expected to bridge the corporate prioritization of the asset management program and the technical review and acceptance of the transportation assets delivered through the city's capital projects design and construction. On the capital side, through the Transportation Network Improvements Charter, the city will continue to perform improvements to intersections that result in enhanced safety or improved levels of service and reduce congestion or delays. The $3.6 million request in 2026 is planned for the construction of Boudreaux and Campbell Road. Investing $482,500 into neighborhood traffic calming to continue the work to complete traffic safety improvements within neighborhoods, inclusive of school zones, playground zones. The capital side also is requesting an investment of $568,000 in the active transportation project to continue to target the completion of engineering, design, and construction of new sidewalk and trail structures to eliminate gaps within the existing transportation network. As the city continues to grow, more investment is needed in planning for that growth. Funding in the amount of $650,000 is being requested for roadway preliminary engineering and design charter for the conceptual planning and or preliminary engineering design of future arterial roadway improvements related to servicing new development. Funding in the amount of $400,000 is being requested to update the municipal development plan. This is to incorporate changes necessitated by the adoption of the Northeast Area Structure Plan, provincial and municipal changes that impact the underpinning and growth and servicing strategies. Funding in the amount of $200,000 is being requested for intermunicipal development plans with the city of Edmonton and Sturgeon County to respond to the provincial requirements to prepare IDPs in accordance with the Municipal Government Act and direction from the province. And these are required by November of 2027. This includes the presentation for this portfolio. We can take questions that you may have, and I have the directors of each of those departments online as well.
Councillor Hughes. When you're
Okay.
ready.
I'll just get started just so that we get started. So the Lakeview Business District, I'm just curious, it says construction done by 2025. And so are we actually, like on one of the early pages, page 99, it said that. So are we actually intending to have the construction finished this year? Because I thought that was fast.
The construction for Lakeview is not finished in 2025.
Okay.
We're in the middle of design work here, and I think if Director of Engineering Donnie George wants to provide any additional information,
yeah.
she's welcome.
It's all good. Like, so we're looking at a different date then, obviously. It says 2025 in there. That's why I saw it and I was like, oh dear, that's quite quickly. just when we look at that, but it's.
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, I can add, I think that's a mistake. In that, it's 2025 is the design, 2026 is the start of construction till 2030. So it's a staged approach that we are taking for the construction.
Okay, perfect. The other question I had, annexation into the city, there's a page 17 again. It said, starting in 2027, annexation into the city documents and starting in 2027. And, I'm just curious, like we did the annexation in 2021. And so, and a lot of our issues right now, like Northeast Servicing, for example, like the annexation lands are related to it. So what is the thought process behind delaying putting into the city documents for another year? Let me see. It's actually the top of 17. It says integration of annex lands and city technical plans and studies starting in 2027.
I'll ask Miss Peter, Director of Planning and Development, to speak to that.
Hi, yes, this is an ongoing project that has occurred since we've brought on the annexation. We've worked on a few, there's been several projects that we've delivered regarding this. The first included the engineering and servicing plans for that area at a very high level to provide us with the general locations and our needs for the servicing, assuming some of the land uses that were identified within the annexation. Currently, right now, we've got recreation and the environment group working on an open space strategy for the annexation land. So we're looking at all of the lands that have environmental interests and also opportunities for us to perhaps continue on a connected trail system within these lands. So looking at Carrot Creek, how it functions, and going forward from there. That will take up a significant portion of that. So that's the project that we're working on right now. And then we'll probably be looking at a few others that have to do with servicing later on, a little bit more detailed.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we're doing it now. It's not actually starting in 2027. There's some action happening now. Is that right, Christina?
Yes, that's correct. Oh, sorry. And I do see now where you're responding to starting in 2027. It's been ongoing.
Okay. I have a couple, then I'll let Neil come in and then we can flip back and forth. The Badger lands. So we have it listed at 4.9 million for the site plan, but there's no indication about servicing or next steps for the Badger lands. And we have a potential school site there. So I'm just curious, what's the 4.9 million for? And then when are we actually planning to make it service ready for a school?
So again, I'll ask Miss Peter to start off with the answer on this one.
I was going to pass this along to Miss George, but I'll start. Right now, we are finishing up the neighborhood plan for the city-owned lands known as the Badger lands. Within it, we do know that there are several municipal assets that we want to plan for, as you discussed, Councillor Hughes, including a school. That plan will give us that overall layout. And then the subsequent planning is actually looking at the detailed engineering, and I'll pass this off to Ms. George.
Thank you, Ms. Peter, through the chair to Councillor Hughes. The 4.9 million that's recorded in the 10-year plan for 2027, consider that as a placeholder, because in the previous budget, we had that as a placeholder, thinking that that might be the value that we may want to invest for remediation of the snow storage component, the contamination that we have on Badger lands. Right now, like Ms. Peter mentioned, there are 3 initiatives in progress. One is the neighborhood plan for Badger lands. There's also the land use, the best use of the land, Badger land study in progress that needs to follow through right after the neighborhood plan. So it's also in progress. And then the third component is based on those 2 studies, we need to come up with the impact study, the remediation plan based on the land uses that we select. So these 3 are connected. So once that is completed, we will be in a better position to say, here's the remediation cost for this particular land use, and that's consider the 4.9 as a placeholder. That'll get revised, which is why it is not in the 2026 budget. Hopefully we'll have an update with all the studies for a 2027 update going forward.
Okay, that makes sense. So what I'm wondering then, so the 4.9 is just remediation, you're saying? So do we have an idea, like the remediation area is in the very back, and so the school site idea was near the front of the closest to Villeneuve Road. So is there any potential that we could actually develop that without doing the remediation in the back? And because we can build up there and deal with that problem later, or is the intention we have to do the remediation first before we even touch land that's not addressed by the remediation needs?
You're right in stating that the most of the remediation might be required at the back end, but we don't know the boundary of it. So that study that we are initiating now for the impact, that will definitely delineate the boundary of it, and we may be able to, say with confidence that yes, we can proceed with the front portion of it earlier than the back end. So that will all come in 2026, towards the end of 26. So hopefully it'll inform the updated budget for 2027.
Okay, so let's just hypothetically say that the area that we wanted to have the school at was not touching the contaminated area. I'll look at you too, Adrian, maybe you're the man, okay. But like if that, well, let's say it's not affected after you would go through the review sometime this year, are we intending then to put the servicing at least for the school site in sooner than later? Or, because I'm not seeing anything in there, and we don't have a lot of high school sites, and we do have that issue with trying to get a high school site available in addition to the community Mendy site. So do we have any type of an idea, and I don't know who would know this answer, of if we're going to, assuming that the remediation is not affecting the school sites, when we're planning to actually move servicing and figure out the costs for that?
So perhaps I'll try to start, and then Ms. Donnie, George can correct me if I'm too far afield here, but as Ms. Peter had mentioned, we're still working on that neighborhood plan. So we're trying to figure out where all the pieces fit. As we've previously mentioned, there is one alignment option where you could have the school off of Villeneuve Road, and servicing is already to Villeneuve Road. So that would be the preliminary or the most early option where you could have servicing for a school site. But there are a couple of handfuls of competing interests for that city-owned land. And so we're trying to go through that site planning exercise to see what is probably the most, let's say, optimal use of those lands. So until we know exactly where we're fitting all of the requested items, I think it would be a little premature to say that we can identify that we can have servicing for a school site, because we don't know exactly where the school site may end up being located.
So when do we think the NSP will be completed then?
I think Ms. Peter said that it would be in 26 here.
I know, I'm just like, do we think in the first half or the second half? Like, if you're to guess, I realize, Christina, that I can't hold your feet to the fire because if you tell me something, but I'm just trying to get a ballpark here on like, are we close to having it done, or are we nowhere near having it done?
Yeah, we're anticipating that it'll be done very shortly. So I would say the beginning of 2026.
Okay, so I'm looking forward to it, like, because it does not come before council anymore, Mr. Fletcher. Like for approval, is it still going to be coming before council for information or anything, or?
Absolutely. Once things are in place, we'll let you know what the concept and construct is. And at the end of the day, if there has to be a resource request for remediation or for sort of additional servicing, depending on the layout, those would be things that we have to come to council for sure.
Okay. The community Mendy site, so we have a couple paving jobs I see that have been added in there. So the 3.9 million, like how far does that go? They have 3.9 million in there for the community Mendy's road construction 079 that's just been added. And I know that it's not, again, this is not this budget, but I think this is also a larger picture that I'm trying to look at right now, is how much are we getting for pavement on that? Do we have an idea? Is that just the road leading up to the community site that we're talking about, or is it actually going into the community site?
Through the chair.
Please go ahead, Donnie.
Sure. Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, that's about 420 meters from Villeneuve Road to the community amenities proposed access on Range Road 260.
Okay. I got to get into the asphalt business, I tell you. The other question I had is I know these are placeholders, but I just want to have just for clarity, because if the public sees this, it might be like, what is the community amenities site? We have it as construction in 2029, 2030. And I don't think, at least the previous council, the intention wasn't to build the whole thing at once. So it was going to be like phased in potentially, just so that people don't have a sticker shock on that debt of $160 million. So is it just being put in there just because, or is it?
Yeah, it's a planning function at this stage. You're quite right. As the design comes to completion, we'll be able to speak about the potential for incremental build or modularization, right? But we need the entire design to know what that looks like. And then ultimately, this also factors into council's determination of the tenure of the capital plan priorities over time, right? So it is very much right now currently the plan, but it's out there in terms of time.
Okay. Good, just so that when people see it, they just don't assume that we've automatically thought that we're putting it in over 2 years. The capital project and contract procedures and the online options for that, I think that was the result of the business improvement specialist from a couple of years ago. And I'm just wondering why it says something like by the end of 2027. I should put my page number on this one, forgive me, but it had that this will be done, expected to be done by the end of 2027. And I'm just wondering why the delay, or what's the impetus to have it delayed to implement these ideas?
Which item was that, Councilor
It's for the
Hughes?
capital project and contrast procedures and for the online options for capital projects. I'm trying to remember the thing here. Forgive me. I wrote it down as a note and I did not put the page number, which was stupid of me. So, I guess the other question is just when are we thinking we're going to be implementing these? Would be the simpler question. From what I understand, that was an important, like it was from the review, that was some of the areas that you were addressing.
Councillor Hughes, if I may ask, are you referring to the standardization of capital projects?
I'm trying to find the page, forgive me. It was, this is what I wrote down, capital project and contract procedures, and then the timeline, which was by the end of 2027, it said.
We've got a suggestion, perhaps page 22. Does that make sense?
That might be it.
Councillor?
I will look and see. It's coming in here. Yeah, it'll be in those. So I guess the time, again, is this timeline incorrect, or when are we actually planning to put those new procedures or start to implement them and figure out the process to making it happen?
Yeah, so I think that this is about online services for permitting.
Yeah.
And development approvals, right?
Extending online options. Yes, you're right, page 22.
Yeah, for
good
building
job.
and development application process.
For
Yeah.
building and development.
And that would tie
applications,
into the approval.
Yeah.
Yeah, so on that one, we do have deliverables in 2026, and then we anticipate it will be multiple years of implementation beyond 26.
Okay, perfect. I'll let Councillor Cortash go ahead and then I'll come after you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I've got a few questions about the traffic calming budget, 482,000. And so reading through the capital charter, just what is that for? Like, I know it's traffic calming, but it's a little bit vague. Like how many projects, or it says kind of don't really know until we know. What is?
Please go ahead, Ms. George.
Through the chair to Councillor Cortash. I'll just start off and then I'll have Dean Schick online who could help us understand the more in-depth version of it. This is a city policy driven project. And it actually, dates back to 2015 or 2016 from a Safe Journeys to School report. So every year, what it entails is we allow application from residents to come through, and it goes through a couple of steps in terms of its validity and warranty process before we can, and residents need to vote for if we need to proceed with the investment option of it. So it's a long drawn process. There's a heavy public participation, community engagement piece in there before we come to the final set of projects that we need to proceed with, which includes the bulb outs that you see in certain pedestrian crossings and things like that's part of it. So I would just ask Dean to come online and maybe explain the program in terms of the current status.
Sure. Thank you very much, Donnie. So maybe to give a bit of a status update of the program itself, we engaged with 4 communities in the last 2 years. 2 community areas, Riverside and Melmo Avenue and Mission, are advancing with traffic calming. And so just for background, the difficulty in the context of saying what exactly the locations are is because, as Ms. George alluded to, it's a resident request basis. And so I can say that we're engaged in actively implementing the process right now with the community of Riverside. We're at a state of, we just shared a traffic calming plan following engagement with residents who communicated issues and locations of concerns with us. So a plan's been developed and we're getting feedback from them. Melmo Avenue, we implemented temporary measures this year and have done a bit of data collection to see the impacts of doing so. And so as such, the 2026 program, as an example, would be looking to revert the Melmo Avenue temporary measures to permanent, and then complete the engagement and essentially the design process on Riverside, and potentially implement some temporary measures there while engaging with the next priority locations. Right now, at this moment, we have approximately 60 applications from residents throughout the city in a variety of different neighborhoods. So we'd be looking at using data to kind of prioritize those applications and then move into that next area of delivering on the process.
Thank you. Did you say 60 or 16? How many?
60 for the number of applications that we have right now. Now, when I say 60, it doesn't mean 60 different locations. There may be some that are residents with concerns of the same street.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Scheck. So then the 482,000, if I understood correctly, that's approximately enough to fund permanent installation at Malmo, the next stage is in Riverside, and then starting to engage with whatever the next priority is after that. So kind of 3 neighborhoods, 4 neighborhoods. I'm just trying to get a sense of what does $482,000 get us? Does it get traffic calming in 3 neighborhoods, 2 neighborhoods, 4 neighborhoods? I don't know. I know it's maybe hard to quantify, but I'm just trying to.
Correct. Yeah. So thank you for your question. Essentially, that is the plan. That funding request is anticipated to address the needs for construction and permanent measures in Melmo, would address temporary measure placement in Riverside, and allow us to do engagement with the next priority community. How the difficulty is to clearly define the actual construction cost of permanent is we don't have that estimate until we have the actual plan developed and the engineering design work done. So I'm confident to say we've done design work and have some costs associated with Melmo Avenue because we're at that state where we've done a plan, it's approved plan with the residents, and we implemented temporary measures. Whereas Riverside, we don't have a construction estimate because we don't really know what the plan is at this point. We're working on a concept right now with residents, but we don't have a definitive plan. So we have a holding number moving forward in future years. But each year that we get through a stage of the process with a community, we would strengthen that estimate or have a stronger accurate cost associated with that year, whether it's temporary measures or permanent. And then we use a general kind of public engagement number to take the first steps with that next priority, that community that may be entering its first stage in that year of the process.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of prioritizing neighborhoods or prioritizing next steps, how are neighborhoods prioritized? Is it just based on volume of complaints isn't the right word, volumes of where the requests are coming in from? But yeah.
Thank you for your question. It's once a request is made, whether there's 1 request or 10, data is what we've tried to focus on. So we look at actual recorded speeds and then collision history trends, and we focus on that. Essentially, the location has to be warranted, which means there has to be a certain volume of, a certain threshold of speed and then collision occurrences. If we have a community or 2 that are kind of equal in terms of the ranges, then we would use that in essentially the number of resident concerns reported to help inform on what the prioritization should be. But we look for the data first.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Perhaps through you, Mr. Mayor, just a question about capital and the budget process and approving or not approving or changing capital expenditures. How does that, or does that affect the budget if we were to amend capital expenditures?
So I can start with an answer. So when you make motions on capital charters, the funding is the grants and reserves. So those would go back to the source to be carried forward for future capital initiatives. They're separate from the municipal operating budget, so they don't reduce or impact the tax requirement.
And this particular project is from reserve. I guess that's one of my other questions too, is the in the capital budget, some are shown as debt funded, the ones that are in red, I think. I don't have it in front of me right now. And so if they're not debt funded, then it's to be assumed, or then they're out of the capital reserve?
Through the chair to Councillor Coratash, that's a good question. If you look on page 60 and 61 of the budget, it provides you with an estimated funding source that we're going to be using. So currently that would be under our pay-as-you-go that's being transferred in. However, it's always an estimate, because if we can find grant funding or other sources, that's what we'll do. But for this one right now, it's allocated as being coming from that.
Looking, I'm trying to find it. Okay. So then so if this, if it's pay as you go, then that pay as you go, wait, pay as you go is out of operating, right? Or pay as you go is out of reserve?
Through the chair to Councillor Coratash, it is interesting. So it does come out of operating. It's an annual transfer in. Effectively, it goes into the capital reserve though. So it's an annual transfer to supplement the capital projects that are going through. We identify it separately, but it all goes into the capital reserve, and anything that's not used is then becomes part of that capital reserve to use for future initiatives. So if a project was unfunded that we had tagged for pay as you go, it would go into the capital reserve for future initiatives.
Okay. I'm going to repeat part of that back to you just to make sure I understand. So the pay-as-you-go funding that gets transferred to the reserve, there's a chunk or a lump sum of pay-as-you-go funding that gets transferred into the reserve, and then from the reserve pays for the capital projects. Is the amount that goes from operating into the capital reserve determined based on which projects are being funded, or is it an envelope of money that gets transferred and then, okay, all right. They were nodding if you're on camera. I don't know. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not episodic. It's defined.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so then if projects aren't funded out of the reserve, then that money just stays in the reserve or can be used to fund other capital projects. Doesn't have a direct result on the property tax this year.
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, I gotta go. I guess my last question for now, the debt funded versus, so the ones, and I just need to get what page is the capital budget on? I'm gonna going back and forth here. The ones that are shown in red that are debt funded, are the rest then out of the reserve? Is that out of operating reserve? And I guess where I'm going with that is how do we determine which projects are debt funded and which ones are out of reserve?
Through the chair to Councillor Coratash, that's a very good question. As you see, these are future forward-looking projects. And the reason right now that we're anticipating that they would need to be funded out of debt versus any grants or reserve is just due primarily to the size of the project. We don't anticipate having that money readily available to be able to fund that amount of a project. So we've anticipated at this time that it will be funded out of debt.
Okay, thank you very much. That's it for now, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Coratash. I just have a quick question. Sorry to jump the queue here. Going back to the traffic calming, one is in the 482,000 or anything future based when we're looking at neighborhoods. Is there a contingency built in there for repairs and maintenance to either the infrastructure or like that, the equipment that's used? You know, you talk about snow removal equipment damages, you know, public damage, all of that. Is there a contingency built into there? One. Two is the temporary measures that are put in place. How long do those stay, and can they be reused in other neighborhoods after we move them from, say, Malmo to somewhere else?
I'll ask Mr. Schick to speak to that.
There we go. Thank you very much for your question, Mayor. First, to address it, no RMR related costs. So let me just rephrase this. Initial warranty with construction would occur, and there's typically a 2-year warranty on the any kind of measures that are installed permanently from the temporary. And so we get that warranty period, and then essentially any repair work, whether it be from seasonal maintenance work or anything like that, damage, comes out of RMR. And so it's not a dedicated fund from this growth charter from the Neighborhood Traffic Calming NGO 58. The temporary measures, yes, they can be relocated. So that's the nice thing is, as the city creates an inventory, because some of the temporary measures we've applied in the past are temporary curb extensions. We've taken them from locations A and B or whatnot that have the temporary applied and are planned for permanent, and then we relocate and reuse those throughout the city. And they have a long life expectancy for use and whatnot. And on Malmo Avenue, where we've applied just recently for the first time in 2025, temporary vertical deflection, the speed cushions, those would be applied in another community as well.
Thank you for the answer. I guess a follow-up to the bump outs being like speed cushions. Yeah. Those, I guess, would cause some additional challenges when it comes to road maintenance and snow clearing. And is that why we go to the bump outs, because we can still use those without impacting those the speed bumps? Or have we looked at other measures? I guess what I'm trying to understand is this really the only reasonable measure for traffic calming in certain areas, as opposed to speed cushions, speed bumps, as you would call them?
My apologies. So just for clarity, the temporary curb extensions are the horizontal measures that kind of widen the curb, if not, and kind of come out into the travel lanes, narrowing the roadway. Those are what we may be referring to as the temporary curb extensions. They've been applied quite for a few years now, for the last 5 or 6 years throughout the community. And they are also relocated. But then just the speed cushions or speed tables or speed bumps that were just applied this year on Malmo Avenue. And so they're a vertical deflection for speed. So there's 2 different measures that I was referring to there. In terms of how the measures are applied and before they're actually applied, we do engage with public operations. As an example, the curb extensions, what they allow, typically they won't influence drainage is a big concern. And so it allows the roadway still to utilize the curb and gutter, reaching the catch basins for surface drainage, snow clearing efforts. The operations teams have been fantastic around the snow clearing and getting around them. We work with them in terms of the design prior to anything going from temporary to permanent, to share the design and address any concerns proactively before permanent construction. And so there's a lot of collaboration and engagement before anything goes in permanent to address operational or functional concerns or maintenance concerns in those regards.
Thank you very much. We'll actually go to Councillor Mackay. I know he had his hand up just before Councillor Clark.
Yeah, not a problem at all. And I apologize if you can't hear me clearly. My question is in relation to the growth infrastructure engineer. When I read the business case justification, is this it sounds more like it's a process than a position. Can you clarify a little bit for me?
Through the chair to Councillor Mackay, I'll take that question. Thank you for the question. So currently, it's not a process, it's an actual work of review of any development growth related applications that we go through. So when planning receives an ASP circulation or NP circulation or right down to the subdivision and development application and development permit, everything has to go through a process of checking against our engineering standards and also make sure the alignment to the past decisions have made are reflected in some of the conditions that we go through. So that's engineering process that we apply to any growth-related applications that come through. So it's a central hub of growth-related engineering reviews that needs to happen. It's currently happening at the manager's level, and a couple of parts of it are happening across the department as well. So it's bringing all that together. Over the years, we have seen capacity issues with having this reside with the manager level, and also a volume and complexity of the application that we have received in the past few years has gone up. So hence this is a request to bring that specific emphasis on how we deal with some of those applications. So that's why it's classified as a growth infrastructure engineer position.
So it's a quality assurance position then that would build a process, or would just kind of feed into an existing kind of a database process, or is there some development that has to happen there?
It's a quality assurance, definitely, but also making sure that some of the past technical reports that has been produced that feeds into some of these planning elements have to be captured if it needs to be conditionally approved. Let's say, for example, in the subdivision application, we condition with certain parameters for the developer to work through to say that this has to be done. Like, for example, a storm pond drainage has to be done this way. A lift station has to be built as part of this. So those are conditions that we apply based on the past decisions and documents that we refer to. And I would probably ask Jordan Betteridge is online. He can add any additional information that I may have missed.
Yes, thanks, Ms. George. Yeah, good afternoon, Council. My name is Jordan Betteridge. I'm the manager of Asset Management, Land, and Integrated Infrastructure Services. So yeah, this position is meant to fill a gap that we currently have in the engineering review process of these long-term planning studies and growth. So as Ms. George alluded to, the workload and the complexity of the project has just increased, especially over the years as we move to this two-tier system. ASPs have now been split down into neighborhood plan studies, which requires, it's kind of like a more complex puzzle. As we have more pieces of land now, we have to make sure that they all work together and the pipes connect together. Some of the gaps we've also identified is that there's no specific discipline expert for the geotech. So we noticed that St. Albert actually has very complicated soils, a high water table, and that actually impacts a lot of the development as well. So this position would fill that gap, providing that level of review. And yeah, just being that bridge between all the different silos that we currently have, whether it's transportation, utilities, parks, environment, just being that consistent, concise source to developers, providing that look ahead, that coordination with developers. It's about, I guess, having that 3 to 5 year or even longer outlook on what developers are bringing forward to the city. This position would be that person to identify the servicing needs, make sure that they're coming forward at the appropriate time, the right size, and just reducing surprises overall for the city and developers. So just improving that relationship and that process. Pretty much like what I was thinking about this position is it's way more costly to fix mistakes than it is for preventative maintenance. Or prevent the mistakes, I guess. So that's what this position would do. It'd have that outlook so that we grow in an organized manner as a city.
Apologies, we may have lost Councillor McKay, but we can move. Oh,
He's still online. Councillor McKay is still on.
Yeah, sorry, I apologize. I might have moved into an area that you can't hear me, but thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the questions.
thank you very much. We'll move to Councillor Clark.
Good afternoon. My questions are regarding traffic calming. So you've identified you had applications from 4 communities, and only one is proceeding. So how do we deal with the driver issues, the traffic within those neighborhoods that aren't proceeding?
Please go ahead.
Is that an enforcement thing? Do we initiate more enforcement within those communities?
Yeah, I
So-
think simplistically, no, go ahead there. Were you going to talk? Okay. Is he up there?
Sorry, everyone. I was just, thank you for your question. Essentially, there is a joint effort. Like traffic safety itself is a multifaceted area. There's engineering, enforcement, education, and of course, ongoing evaluation and engagement with residents. So messaging, safety messaging, and education. So there's no one single prong that's going to hit and ultimately solve traffic safety all on its own necessarily. Each has its better areas of influence and benefit. In areas that we aren't performing engineering and redesign of the roadway for improvements through the traffic calming, it does not negate residents from sharing isolated point of location concerns for safety, where we respond with an engineering effort. So there are issues where it's not necessarily associated specifically with traffic calming, but it might be a pedestrian crossing concern, visibility, that we can improve and try and address that area. And that might be in, you know, a similar method, similar measures with curb extensions or whatnot may address that issue, but it's not directly aligned with the traffic calming holistic neighborhood process. We also collaborate with the enforcement group and go out and collect data. So when someone is reporting speed concerns, as an example, we'll go and collect data and then use that information and share it to hopefully help enforcement with resources, because it comes back with time-stamped information in terms of what speeds are being recorded and when. And so we can share that with them for their efficiency of resource allocation to specific areas. And then also just direct communication with residents as well. We work with our communications group in a variety of safety messaging campaigns. We have information on the website associated with motor vehicle collisions and speed information. So we try to get as much information out there and hit this in that multifaceted approach.
Thank you. And a follow-up to that, what kind of overview do you have? Do you go back in and actually look at the effectiveness of even the permanent traffic calming? And how often would you do that?
Thank you very much for your question. We have an annual program which goes out and collects speed data. It's reaching a point, being that traffic calming itself was implemented, it kind of finalized in Ehrenbridge, was one of the first communities. We're getting to that point where we're able to start to see the trends and the impacts. So, because you don't want to necessarily look at a single year and compare 1 year from the previous, you want to look at a 3 to 5 year trend and see what the influences are. So we're hitting that point where we've applied traffic calming now. And so we're taking a little bit more of a deeper dive into that analysis to see. But overall, we can see some influence in certain areas, and we'd be happy once we have that report and that stronger analysis to share it with council and the public to make it available. But I can share kind of anecdotally what we see is in some of the areas where the traffic calming is applied, like the horizontal measures, like the curb extensions that I was talking about, they have a short-term effect where we're talking about 1 to 2 years, and then we slowly start to see the speed start to increase. Drivers become a little more comfortable and confident. Whereas in certain areas, and I'll use Ehrenbridge Drive as an example, where we had a combination of measures with the curb extensions and then raised crosswalks as well with the vertical, we were seeing a little bit longer impact and benefit with lower speeds. So just anecdotally, I can share that as information. And what we found as a result from this year on Melmo Avenue, where we actually applied more of the vertical measures, those speed cushions that I was talking about, the vertical measures are known to have a more influence on speed. And so they reduce the speed versus the horizontal measures more so. We recorded that and caught that on Melmo Avenue as a good example in a case study. It was one of the first areas that we actually applied those types of measures, and we saw the results, recognizing it was in a single season. So I don't want to, go out and over promote it, but it had a very strong benefit and reduction in speed in that area. So it's one that we can look to continue to apply in areas of high speed concerns. And look to see if that is consistent in the results for those measures that we apply with the temporary, and then suggest permanent if necessary.
And would we ever look to actually remove anything? And I'm just reflecting on some complaints that I heard through my campaign in particular right in front of Lois Hole School, where people coming down Edinburgh Court can't actually turn right onto Everett during high traffic volume because there's so much conflict between pedestrians and vehicles going either way that they can't make a right-hand turn because they're actually swinging out into oncoming traffic. So just more of a comment than but that, you know, those kinds of things, you know, the unintended consequences of yes, we're maybe keeping pedestrians safer at particular times, but maybe not at all times. Those are
Absolutely appreciate that feedback. And if we have concerns, we're more than happy to look into any site specifics. That's an area that we haven't received, but we could take that as a separate discussion point and investigate that area.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Clark. Maybe just to, sorry, Marta, is this open for comment or is this just questions addressed to administration at this time?
This should just be questions. right
Okay,
now.
then I'll table that for later. I'll move it to Councilor Bermansky.
Thank you, through the mayor. A couple of questions with regard to the asset management department, the $60,000 consultant fee for an inspection. I know that we've had adjustments to asset management, I believe, last year and the year prior with a couple people working on that. Is this inspection cost something that's expected, or is that something to just sort of see where you're at in what you're planning?
Through the chair to Councillor Bermansky, thank you for the question. So this is not inspection, this is implementing. So we have two-phased approach from a strategic asset management perspective. One is the policy amendment. There's a council policy that's existing that is up for renewal. So we tackle that through the phase one. This is phase $2 that we are requesting, essentially to take that policy and develop our asset management strategy, which is the how the direction that we want to give the whole organization, because we are dealing with 30 some asset classes. And then the SAM, which is strategic asset management plan, is the what of the how. That those two are very strategic level documents that essentially guided from an ISO 55000 perspective that we need to embark on. So this is phase two approach that we are requesting $60,000. I'll also note that 60,000 may not be quite enough to cover that. So what we are planning to do to bridge that gap is maybe bring any leftover consulting dollars that is unused for 2025 through a carry forward budget. So you will see that request probably in 2026 early for an approval to bridge the gap. So Jordan, anything more to add to that? Please go ahead.
No, you got it, Donnie. Thanks.
Okay, and when you're expecting it could be a bit more, like how much more?
We're anticipating maybe likely another 20 to 30,000 more, but again, that's subject to how we are doing with the phase one and any leftover money that we haven't unused. We are planning to use that towards that phase two plus the 60,000, and anything more that we will come back with the carry forward budget request.
Okay, and then thank you. And then my next question is related to the MDP and IDP. The numbers that you've calculated for that, could they be quite a bit different than that number? Are you speculating high, low, middle on that? It's kind of a guess, right?
Yeah, I'll ask Ms. Peter to speak to the MDP IDP.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Clark. Part of this, we're at this stage, we are, I don't want to use the word guessing, but we are making informed recommendations on essentially what the budget we anticipate it to be. Should the budget go, what we don't want is the budget to go over. So we feel that this amount of funds should cover the costs of both the IDP and the MDP. When projects come to their completion and if there is additional funds left over, they get put back into the general funds. And I think our friends in finance can explain a little bit more regarding that. But just as to the cost, these are our estimates based upon past projects and general consulting rates.
Okay, so I'm hearing you're thinking it's pretty accurate then.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bermansky. We'll move to Councillor Hughes.
Okay, thank you. So a couple things. So engineering 068 for active transportation. Part of the sidewalk is the Carnegie, Boudreaux, and Carnegie Drive. So those 3 streets. I'm just trying to figure out, it's probably you, Dean. How do we assess where we need to put the sidewalks each year on a priority basis? Because I'm just trying to figure out how much usage we're expecting to have on this. And I realize we have a standard of trying to make it all across the city, but we also have an infrastructure gap, et cetera. So what was the thought process behind getting this one as the top priority for this year?
Thank you very much, Councillor Hughes, for your question. Essentially, what we've been working on for the last few years through the Active Transportation Plan is a GAPS report that was completed back in 2014, 2015 with, it was a recommendation of an actual strategy from the Transportation Master Plan of 2014, 2015, and a GAPS analysis that was done in and around 2018. So since that time, we've been focusing and addressing gaps that were reported in our network, missing sidewalk or trail. Some of the criteria that we looked at for informing on the prioritization was the adjacent land use, the actual whether or not transit stops were connected or not, or missing sidewalk connectivity, potential demographics of users, i.e. like kind of associated with the land use, but the schools, senior areas, or high commercial sites. And then we also assessed some of the areas for feasibility. So we've been working on that list for some time now. So Campbell is not one of the first priorities that we've addressed. We've addressed a few different areas along some of the arterial networks. In the recent, just before we moved to Campbell, we had addressed Riel, the business park as well, with Riel Drive, our collector roadway going through that industrial area as well. And this past year, we focused on Corvu, and Carnegie is the next priority in that state. So unfortunately, in the city, we don't have volume necessarily of pedestrians or cyclists or anything like that. We don't have a good background on data for use to suggest this is based on a use evidence kind of information, but it's just associated with those other criteria on kind of delivering on a fully connected multimodal network. So it's the sidewalk connecting to transit, linking to general land uses and considerations of users.
Okay. I'm just curious because those seem like really low usage areas for pedestrians. Like one of them on Boudreaux, I guess, where are you thinking on Boudreaux? Because I'm also thinking Campbell Road, but where are you thinking on Boudreaux that you're going to be putting the sidewalk?
There's a little segment off of in just off of Carnegie that connects to Boudreaux, and then there's a segment also on the south side of Boudreaux in that area as well. That there's a gap kind of from Vaness that connects holistically to the east side of Boudreaux and Campbell. There's a small segment, or Carnegie, I should say.
Okay. Okay. I have a follow-up question about the traffic bulb boats. So I know that you had it as a comment, Councillor Clark. I'm going to ask a question on this one. So the traffic bulb boats in the problem areas, and I don't really know if people know where to complain to you because not everybody has your direct line, Dean, although it may feel like it. Not everybody has your direct line. So like on Gish, if you're going on Gish and it's when you're leaving to go eastward, going head towards Boudreaux, like you're on Aikens, you're heading towards Boudreaux. The bulb boat right after the school is again having the same issue that we're experiencing at Lowe's Hole, where they can't make lefts, they can't make rights easily, and there's a lot of congestion in that school. So it actually creates more stress than less for certainly for all the drivers that are trying to like not hit people. Like that's generally our goal when we're driving. So has there been any thought process about removal of bulb boats? Because it's only been adding, but there may be situations where we go, actually on second thought, this is not actually solving the problem like we intended. And I've never heard of any that actually have been removed. So has there been a process of consideration for that?
Thank you very much for that question, Councillor Hughes. It's a case where no, to date, there have not been any formal removals. There has been a redesign based on concerns. So I would, without knowing a specific site, the issues and what a result of a review would be, I would say that I wouldn't jump to the conclusion to say the extension should be necessarily fully removed. I think if it's a turning radius concern along those lines, subject to what that may be, then we could look at that. It might be a slight redesign. But I would say that if, as an example, in a highly congested area, drivers are slowing down, having to put a little effort and thought and being like watching for pedestrians and watching their turning movements, we're getting the outcome we want out of that. That extension is doing what it's doing then. But in saying that, we shouldn't be putting, people in a position that they're turning into oncoming traffic or having that type of concern. So despite in all the design applications and before the implementation, turning movement assessments are done. We use turning movement modeling to design the curb extensions. So it's anticipated that a typical standard driver and passenger vehicles or a waste management vehicle is going to make that turn. But in saying that, if it's just an on-site issue, then I haven't heard specifically of sites to date. Minus the one that we changed, it was Deer Ridge that we went back and redesigned and addressed the issue. But that would be something that we take into account and look to resolve.
Okay, because I understand that the idea is to slow people down, but when you've got cars coming in 6 different directions, or certainly like you have 1, 2, and then you have 1, 2, and then you got the kids coming, and it's no longer slowing down. It's now, I actually don't know where to look because I've got people coming everywhere and I've got cars and it's like, I got balls falling in my face here if you're trying to juggle them and I can't catch it. So I guess I don't really know. It just is, I guess, is a suggestion. I'm not really sure what to do. Is there is no actual process for people who are going through those intersections to actually get back to us, to actually say, hey, Dean, can you look at this as a redesign? So it'd be awesome if we'd actually have some kind of communication where it says, if you're having a problem with these particular bulb outs, as a bare minimum, this is how the process of how to contact us to let us know that you have concerns. Because right now, all we have is people who are generally upset or stressed, but there's no way to actually resolve the situation. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much for that
Way,
feedback.
Councillor Dean. Yeah, thank you. Oh.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, so that's one. This is totally not specific on here, but it's related to P&E. So noise study. I've been getting lots of complaints of recent time about just noise in all the streets. And so I'm wondering, is there any plans coming forward? I don't know who I need to look to. I'm looking at everybody broadly now. Right now, Marta, you're my favorite person because you have nothing to do with it. Is there any intentions to try to address the noise issues? Like I'm thinking there's issues on Hebert, there's issues on Giroux. There's all of the collectors, I guess, or non-main arterials. Anybody's backing onto these guys are having some serious noise issues. And I realize that our current standards are has to be up at that level 24 hours a day. And if it isn't at 3 o'clock in the morning, then they're out. But it's getting to the point where it's affecting quality of life for people. So is there any type of intentions to bring something forward in coming times to either look at this or try to figure out some kind of solutions?
Not that I'm aware of, Councillor Hughes.
What would it take to
Well,
have something?
Can I?
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, I don't want to interrupt, but I may be able to jump in and thank you, Councillor Hughes, for your question. So as you may be aware, for all council, the city has been performing some noise study starting back in 2019, 2020. We've gone through 2 iterations of citywide assessments, essentially monitoring a variety of sites based on resident requests and involvement and volunteerism in the program, backing onto arterial roadways. So essentially each arterial roadway has had an assessment performed. For clarity, the industry best practice right now is set at that 65 level of 65 decibels as that 24-hour average, as Councillor Hughes alluded to. No location in St. Albert was captured at that level or exceeding that level. So essentially the result came back saying we're in compliance right now with all the conditions within industry best practice and standards. The issue is that, to Councillor Hughes' point, is that 65 decibels acceptable to our community and to our residents? From the complaints and the concerns received, the insinuation would be no. That 65 level is not. On average, I think our highest level recorded was in and around 62 decibels. And so in these areas, what we've done is we focus now on the higher levels where recorded noise levels were recorded. And what we want to do now for council's consideration is come back and show what a concept noise barrier would be. Where we're at, I should say, Councillor Hughes, as an update to the project, is to assess one of the higher areas, which happens to be Belrose and the intersection of Belrose and Boudreaux on the northwest corner is one of the higher recorded areas, still not exceeding the 65 decibel threshold, but higher leveled, and do a concept of what a noise barrier would be, and then get a cost estimate and look to show council what the cost would be. What would also though be the monitoring and the actual the results of that barrier. So we've actually performed that analysis in some areas to which a noise structure would reduce the level, but we're talking about, as an example, on Giroux Road, in the areas that we monitored, the traffic volumes to reach a point of exceeding 65 decibels are monitored are modeled to be required to go triple to 4 times what the volumes exist today. So it's exceeding the volumes of what we're actually predicting the roadway to handle in the future. So the roadway ultimately is not expected to exceed that 65 decibels. But that's not concluding to say that we're accepting that 65 decibels is the level that the city of St. Albert desires as a threshold. And so we want to show what that is. We're also drafting a policy amendment to our essentially, well, I shouldn't say draft, but we are drafting a new policy around traffic noise levels and looking at industry best practices as they've changed, because a lot of communities are facing this right now, much as we are. And so we're looking at what may be applied for new development in terms of any lowered thresholds or tolerance levels or criteria, and what may be considered for a retrofit in the city. So I don't have an ultimate answer. I'm sorry, Councillor Hughes, to say this is a defined response for us, but we're in process of continuing the noise assessments through the city.
You don't have to apologize. Not a bad answer at all. Do you have an idea of when you're going to come forward with that just the cost analysis of trying to address this? 'Cause I know it's not cheap. So do you have are you thinking it'll be in the next 12 months or it'll be longer than that? Or what's your timeline?
Our objective, Councillor Hughes, is to have that presentation and report shown to council in 2026.
Okay, that's perfect. And I don't know this is specific to you, Dean, or if it actually goes to policing or what, but it's related to the noise, it's the drag racing. So we've had so many complaints and they're doing it all summer. We can hear it from more than half a kilometer away from the actual location. They're enjoying it basically from 11 p.m. to about 2 o'clock in the morning. And there doesn't appear to be any street that's safe from it. And I don't know if it's Dean or if it's someone else, but there doesn't appear to be anything happening, at least from a resident perspective, to try to address or discourage this. And I'm not
That's not true. That's not true. Point of order. That's not true. You can't make a statement like that.
I'm just asking, Ken, I'm not claiming any type of statement. I'm asking what is being done. So please.
No, well, I know, but that's not what your question was, Mr. Mayor. I mean, the point, there's lots of things being done. So the question could have been what is being done, not there isn't anything being done.
I'm saying that's what I'm hearing from residents. So Ken, if you want to clarify what is being done, that would be awesome.
I can certainly try. I don't think Mr.
Can I rule
Giesbeck,
on
I'm
the
not
point of
sure if he's there. Yeah, I'm just saying, it wouldn't be up to me, Mr. Mayor, but maybe Mr. Giesbeck is online. I'm not sure because I'm not there. So, but I can certainly attempt it. But my point was around just the tone of the question.
Okay.
I'm sorry if you misinterpreted the tone. I'm not trying to be accusatory. I'm trying to ask what we're doing to address the problem that people have brought up to me over and over and over again the past 3 months.
Okay. Can you please restate the question objectively and try to remove the subjectivity or the emotion of it?
What is being done to address the drag racing in St. Albert?
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. And Mr. Giesbrecht is online. I'll ask him to respond.
Yeah, thank you. Certainly, policing services has received a number of complaints through a number of different ways from the community about the trend of excessive muffler noise and drag racing at all hours of the night. It's obviously, happens a lot in the springtime and summertime when people are outdoors, and it tends to go away a little bit in the winter just because people aren't hearing it outdoors. But what I can share is that the RCMP and community peace officers are certainly looking for these offenses and issuing tickets as it relates to these offenses. There are plans in going into spring of next year as well to work with the city of Edmonton, Strathcona County, and some of the surrounding municipalities on Project Tensor, which is a targeted program specifically around vehicle equipment and mufflers. And our hope is that through some increased enforcement, we're going to be able to make an impact in that area. The challenge being, of course, tickets alone, unfortunately, aren't going to solve this problem. I'll give you one small example. I think we've issued over 15,000 speeding tickets last year, and speeding still occurs. Not to say that it doesn't have an impact. It's just that it's until other legislation provincially and federally across Canada helps prevent these kinds of vehicles from being produced and selling of these types of mufflers. It's going to be a continual challenge in our communities, I believe. But law enforcement is aware, and we are working towards mitigating those.
Yeah, and I also understand it's a really difficult problem to solve, Aaron. Like, this is just, you're trying to catch guys that are going pretty fast. I had a question about this, was just somebody who was concerned about it said that some other communities were actually issuing like tickets on sound, where they had it like it would be like after 11 p.m. if it was above a certain threshold, that then they would do photo radar, but specifically on sound thresholds. And I don't know, have we looked at that as an option? Because it's actually happening in some places in Alberta. And I'm happy to send you the article that they sent me if you wanted. Because you may not be aware of it, and I wasn't until it was brought forward to me. So it seems like it might be allowed in Alberta. I just don't know if you've had any thoughts about that yet.
Yeah, I could speak briefly to that. So if you're talking about the technology for automated noise enforcement, that technology has been piloted once in the city of Edmonton and found not to be to a standard that we could actually do prosecutions on. I think the city of Edmonton spent over $200,000 doing that study, and it didn't have the result they wanted. There's some new technology that they are piloting in Edmonton, and we are watching closely as to what that's going to do, and if the province of Alberta, with that evidence, would actually be able to prosecute those offenses. I can share with you that there is no decibel levels that we need in order to issue tickets. The tickets that we issue is about whether the noise is unreasonable and coming out of a muffler. That's kind of the standard, is it's what's unreasonable. And so it doesn't have to be as complicated as getting, measurements and decibel readings. And we've been successful in getting those prosecutions. It's just a challenge of being there at the time of when it occurs. Tends to be a little bit of the issue. And then the automated technology, we're watching very closely.
Okay, thank you for that. And I also realize it's difficult because we were short-staffed on top of it all. So, yeah. And because winter's coming, I feel like if I had a crazy car, I'd drive it less crazy in the winter because of snow and stuff, right? So hopefully there'll be some kind of solution. The other question I had, this is to you, Mr. Slot. So the planning and engineering sales and user fees, when I look at the page 90, so we'll go through it. So in 2023, 1,900 on sales and user fees, 2024 actuals 2,000 or 2 million. 2025 revised budget, I know we moved it up to 1.2 million, but we're not moving it up at all for 2026. So, and yet we are expecting pretty stellar year going forward. So I'm just trying I realize that we want to do this cautiously, but is there a reason why in fact, we moved it down from last year?
I'll ask Miss Peter to join us to speak to the fees.
Sure.
Through the mayor, yeah, just kind of looking at this, one of the things that we are anticipating this next year is a bit of a slowdown in the economy based upon the tariffs and some of the impacts. So that is partially why we've essentially kept them. They are a little bit lower, but we do anticipate that we won't have as many permits this next year.
So are we anticipating a 40% drop?
Oh, You know what? I'm going to have to get back to you on this one, Councillor Hughes.
Sure, because I'm also wondering for the licensing and permits. I'm pleased if you can just explain to the sales and user fees and licensing and permits, what are we getting from each category? Like the sales in general, the sales and user fees are what versus the licensing and permits, just so that everybody who's watching at home, who's riveted right now, understands what the two categories are.
So regarding permits, what we end up, majority of them are based upon permits. So those are things like if you come in and need an electrical permit or a building permit, or a development permit, and those are quite large. Regarding the licenses, they're much smaller. We have things like a license for a hen and bee application, and those are at about $50 a per thing. So they're all essentially fees for service.
And then the sales and user fees, what falls into that as an example?
I would need to take that back. Because this is both the planning and engineering budgets, so it could be cross-referencing both our budgets at this point.
And that makes sense. I'm just trying to figure out just
Yeah.
like what's going for what. So, again, I guess the license and permits I realize that 2024 is a normally high. So 2025, it came back as 2,900. And then again, we've barely moved it up at all for this next proposed budget. So I guess
Yeah, so that's again kind of based upon, again, the permits are definitely more in my or within my group. We do anticipate a little bit because of just inflation, but again, we are anticipating a reduction in some of the we don't expect to be as robust next year with our buildings. So we're anticipating a bit of a decrease, to be honest.
Sorry.
And 2025, we are looking at our 2025 actuals for right now. We are approaching that amount. So we're not too far off with that number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Councillor, I think we have a bit of context to your previous.
Sure, that'd be great.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Hughes. I'll add on to it, and then if there's any further questions that you have, we can get back to it with a BIR. So actually, the increase in the licenses and permits are to do with the permit fees that are issued. So they did increase the budget for that in 26 over 25. Under sales and user fees, those are such things as some of our compliance certificates. They're noting that there's been a gradual drop in those over the last couple of years. And then offset by some slight increases in like development fees and subdivision fees. Again, those are spread, I think, between engineering and planning and development. But the permit fees, they're part of that license and permits, and that has been increased for the budget for 26.
So we also just actually increased the cost of the permits as well this year. Like when we did the master fees, there was an increase to that as well, right? So we incorporated that into this as well, because we've done actually we haven't even done $100,000 increase to the overall budget for licensing and permits between 25 and 26. And yet we also did an increase, I remember us reading about we had however many millions increased from the master fees increases. So I'm assuming you did include that. I'm just wondering how far up push it.
Yeah, so we did include that. We based it upon the cost of living and the inflation that we had. So it was approximately 3% is what we increased the fees, and we correspondingly increased the permits and user fees to reflect that 3% as well.
Okay, so we're actually anticipating less buildings then for 2026 and 27? Or 2026 and 25, sorry.
The buildings, we're anticipating it'll overall increase, not significantly, but there will be a little bit of an increase. For the sales and user fees, we are seeing a decrease, yes.
Okay.
So it's just buildings, seeing more buildings is regarding the permits.
Yeah.
The user fees are more like the subdivision applications. We're anticipating that we'll have a few less this year. We did have a rush at the end of this year, so we're anticipating that that amount will be lower for 2026.
Okay. And so the revised budget is still just our budget. It's not the year-to-date actuals or like, it's like when we look at revised budget right now, is it just like that's
correct. It is our budget that was approved in December, plus any budget changes that happened when we did our budget adjustment time. So we just refer to it as revised.
yeah. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, are we thinking that's going to be the right number at this point? Or are we thinking it's going to be higher than this number for 2025 for sales and user fees? Like, because I'm just like, when was the last time we adjusted? I guess what I'm asking you.
So quarterly, within planning and development, we do go in and adjust and look at our actuals. We will bring things up if they should report that at Q3. It's a pretty important time frame, actually, Q3, because it does help inform for this next budget. So it should have been it would have been revised to reflect those actuals. So this is where we're very close to being at. It wouldn't incorporate anything that would have come in October, November, or December.
Okay, so we've actually had a pretty big drop then, you're saying, between 2025 and 2024 for sales and user fees,
Yes.
like a 40% drop.
So if I might just through the chair to Councillor Hughes, right now we are forecasting about over almost 1.5 million less in 25 than we had in 24 at the third quarter. And the 26 budget is reflecting a little bit higher than what our Q3 forecast is right now.
Okay, thank you for that. I have one more question about the MDP, Christina, so don't go anywhere. When do you think it will be done? Like, assuming this gets approved today, when do you plan to start? Because I realize there's a lot on your plate. And when do you anticipate completing it?
It's a good question. At this stage, the MDP is probably is not the highest priority project from a planning and development perspective. That could change based upon council's direction. We are looking at trying to get one of the IDPs with Edmonton done, trying to advance that one quickly. So I think from our perspective, the priority will be to look at that IDP, get that started, then move on to the MDP, and then work with government relations and try to get the last IDP done. So I think from our perspective, that's the order and priority for us.
So where does the MDP fall in there? Forgive me, I got lost.
Second. So we'll probably be looking at the probably Q3 of starting to put together our project charter and send things out for consultants to respond back to through RFP.
And then when do we hope that, a realistic hope of when? Because that would be 2020, third quarter 2026.
Yeah.
That takes time. So what are we looking at, a couple of years to finish it, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, we're looking at about 2 years, just because we want to keep it in line with the IDPs as well. So we're anticipating approximately 18 to 24 months.
Okay, so we're probably looking at the end of 2028 then to get it wrapped up. Is that what I'm hearing?
I've got in here, Q1 of 2028 with the one IDP. So is when we'd be done. So it would be somewhere in Q1, Q2 is when we'd be looking at coming back.
Okay, cool. Now I don't know who to add. This is a location specific questions. Thank you for that, Christina. I'm done with you on the MDP, so you can exhale for a second. I have some, like the new area of Chiro. We've had a little bit of feedback from people that are living there that are looking for, I guess, I don't know, just more inclusive, like feeling more included in the community. They feel this way, not necessarily are this way, but they kind of feel this way. So there's a question about, like if there's any type of intention to put a sidewalk from the entrance to Chiro to Ray Gibbon Drive, and then also from Ray Gibbon Drive into Chiro, because there's kids that are walking to school and there's no sidewalk there, and they have to cross Ray Gibbon Drive at the intersection. So I'm just, is there any intentions or plans to put that in place? And if so, when?
I'll ask Miss George to see if she has an answer.
Sure. And I mean, we can put these as BIRs if you don't have the answer, Donnie. I mean, I know this is a sudden area, so I'm not expecting it. I just thought if you had it, I wouldn't have to put it in writing and it'd save you some work.
Thank you for the question. The quick answer is as part of the Ray Given Drive phased approach, there is a sidewalk program that needs to be implemented as part of it. In terms of timelines, I would probably ask Dean in terms of a latest update on that.
Okay. So I'll just do this as BIRs, but I'll just tell you, I'll just read them. And if you can answer them, it's great. And if you can't, you can jump in, Dean, if you know something. There's also this is one of their questions they had, is that there's a yield sign. They want to change it to a stop sign at the T intersection in front of the Chereau Paris playground, because there's a lot of construction trucks that are just taking it on the curve and not really slowing down. They're kind of seeing that yield sign as just a decorative function. And if they had a stop sign, then at least the kids might feel safer crossing that road to go to the playground. I guess, and I'm just looking for, I've never had to actually ask for changes in signage before, Dean, so I'm not really sure how you want to go about this.
Perfect. Through the chair, I can address both just for confirmation to Ms. George's comments. Yep, sidewalk and trail connections are planned to essentially connect Ville Giroux. So that's on the east side of Ray Given Drive with Giroux, as well as to the west to the Chereau connection with the Ray Given Drive improvements. Expect 2026, of course, with construction and where we're at right now, we expect that timeline, but I'll caveat that to construction and seasonal influences next year. But that's our objective is for 2026. In terms of that yield sign, I'll take that right now. No further action is necessary, and we'll go out and look at that site and look at the potential. I don't want to say with clarity, like for certainty that it'll be changed, because I want to look at the site and maybe get oh, here we go. Frog in my throat. Just a site investigation and a review before I commit to a change, but we'll perform that review.
I really appreciate that, Dean. The other question, and this is just I don't know, it was an expensive question. Is there any plans to put a permanent walkway overpass between Chereau and Northridge? And like to cover that over either there at the community amenity site or anything like that? I know there was discussions a long time ago about that and it wasn't a cheap option. But I don't know where we stood on the plans of even considering that further.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes, for your question through the chair. There was previous concepts actually at the south portion of Ray Given with the Enjoy Center connecting to Lois Hole, and that's where the concept came for an overhead pedestrian crossing ranging from $8 to $13 million for that crossing, depending on the style. Conceptually, there's been discussion around the amenity site and the potential. At this point, though, no definitive funding, project consideration, or design work has occurred to deliver on that. We recognize, of course, right now that with Ray Given operating as a 4-lane arterial, we'll get some life expectancy out of the at-grade crossings. Pedestrians will be accommodated to cross Ray Given Drive as a 4-lane arterial. It's marked as a boulevard in our system, but until that potential widening, the demands and the life expectancy of those at-grade crossings should be sufficient with the trail connections and sidewalk connections being delivered with the Ray Given widening improvements as well.
Okay, that's all my questions. Can you believe it, guys? I'm done. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Just a follow-up question, maybe through Mr. Fletcher or his leadership team. Can we just go over real quickly the specifics around the neighborhood plan for Lakeview, timelines, and then it mentions, processes and streamlining processes and green tape. What's the objective? What are we looking at in terms of like the metrics or the measurables out of that to ensure it's moving as efficiently as possible, which is extremely important for that development of the Lakeview Business District?
So you're asking specifically about our work to craft the neighborhood plan for the Lakeview District?
Yeah, just like the specifics around this neighborhood plan and what I guess the investment, what are we yielding out of that investment once it's done?
Yeah, I'll turn that over to Mr. Slatt, the quarterback. Thank you.
I'll actually ask Mike Erickson, Director of Economic Development, to see if he wants to speak, because he's the one that's kind of leading the charge on Lakeview right now.
Thank you, Mr. Slatt, and thank you for the question, Mr. Mayor. where we see the benefit in forming this work is we've already undertaken neighborhood planning for the city's lands, but this project would complete that process for the entirety of Lakeview. Some of the benefits would be things like enhancing some of the coordination amongst some of those landowners, because there are multiple landowners within the district, and then improving planning from Mr. Betteridge touched on this earlier, just around some of the engineering design work, some of the land use planning. And then I think the last part would be ultimately to try to help reduce the amount of time and make it easier for future private development in that area.
Thank you very much for that. And then timeline on this, and are we moving, in your opinion, I guess professionally, as efficiently as possible to be, from a project perspective, be shovel ready, as well as once we are shovel ready from a permit perspective to get that moving as efficiently as possible?
Yeah, maybe I could start, Mayor. I'll answer the second part of your question, and I'll turn it over to Mike, to talk about some of the detailed piece. And so I do think it is important to highlight that, this is recognized, councils, this is the number one priority, right? And so I will say, without, getting down the rabbit hole too deep, that we've done some significant reprioritization of work across planning and development, economic development in particular, engineering too as well, to front end load a lot of this stuff. And these are not our normal processes. We're not normally in the business of doing neighborhood plans for others, right? And so in terms of expediting both the planning component and then ultimately the implementation of the physical solution from a servicing piece, we're going much faster than we would have otherwise. And I'm actually quite proud of the team for being able to sort of down tools and focus like this on a multidisciplinary fact. So Mike, I'll turn that over to you. Then you can certainly, expand on any of that. But please go ahead and talk about the timelines, and from your perspective, marketing this thing. If there's anything else you wanted to add.
Yeah, I would say that it's sorry, thank you, Mr. Fletcher. We're expecting the project to take about 12 months, and this is based on previous neighborhood plan work that's been completed in the past. I believe Mr. Fletcher kind of covered everything, but we do feel that this is an important step. There's been several steps in bringing Lakeview to fruition with an objective of making it as easy as possible and trying to reduce the timelines required for private development. So this is just one more initiative that we feel would be helpful in this process, knowing that it is a organizational and council priority.
Thank you very much. That wraps up my questions. If there's anybody else on council. I believe that's it for now. Thank you very much. We can now move it to the presentation through Mr. Fletcher to operations.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor. Oh my goodness. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, is what I tried to say first off. I'll turn it over to Dino Alex, who's our Managing Director of Operations, who's going to run through two presentations.
Oh, sorry. If I've just been asked if we can take like a 5-minute break here, that would be much appreciated.
By all means, then you saved me from my own tongue. So
thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I will not repeat what I just did, except to say Mr. Dino Alex, who's Managing Director of Operations, is going to actually lead the presentation for the next two agenda items. And so we will split operations from utilities. Those are two distinct issues. And so without any further ado, I'll turn it over to him. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fleischer. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. It is my pleasure to present the 2026 budget for the operations portfolio. The operations portfolio provides external services in the areas of culture, community and social development, recreation and parks, public works, facilities, fleet, transit, utilities, and waste management. These services are delivered by permanent, temporary, casual, seasonal, and contracted services throughout three departments: community services, recreation facilities, and public operations. The budgets for the Arts and Heritage Funds and the St. Albert Public Library are also represented as part of this portfolio. The Community Services Department mandate is to provide arts, culture, and preventive social services to foster a community where residents feel included, safe, supported, and connected. By working collaboratively with individuals, families, organizations, and schools, they facilitate creative solutions, artistic experiences, and offer opportunities that engage, empower, strengthen, and enrich the well-being of our residents. Through the Family and Community Support Services, the FCSS program, Community Services partners with the province of Alberta under an 80-20 funding model to deliver preventive social programs, which helps invest in local solutions that strengthen community well-being and respond to the evolving social needs. The Recreation and Parks Department mandate is to enhance community well-being and foster connections through building, partnering, and delivering recreation facilities, parks, programs, and services. They play a vital role in supporting the physical and mental health and well-being of St. Albert's citizens, fostering personal growth and community development. The department provides services that support the recreation needs of the citizens of St. Albert through the provision of aquatics, recreation and fitness programming, recreation facility operations, and facility rentals, support to community organizations, direct event provision, and support to community events, as well as parks planning and stewardship. The following slide is a summary of page 79 of the budget document and shows the overall impact of the 2026 projected budget for the Community Services and Recreation and Parks departments and its comparison to the 2025 revised budget. The net impact is an increase of $240,000. Key highlights are as follows. On the revenue side, $569,000 increase in sales and user fees due to an increase in membership, admissions, and lesson fees from rate increases. $311,000 decrease in transfers to and from reserves due to one-time projects not budgeted in 2026, such as the 2029 Special Olympics, Oilers watch parties, and various public art projects. On the expense side, there's about $468,000 increase in salaries, wages, and benefits due to the annualization of salary costs. $222,000 a decrease in contracted and general services due to the one-time projects that were referenced in the revenue side that were offset also by an increase in temporary support for implementation of corporately prioritized projects. $198,000 increase in transfers to organizations due to an increase in the transfer to the Arts and Heritage Foundation and the FCSS funded agency grants. A $282,000 increase in transfers to and from operations capital due to the additional funding requests from the library and an increase in the internal transfers to operations. Moving now to the Public Operations Department. The Public Operations Department's mandate is to steward essential and valued services for the city with the dedication, pride, knowledge, and respect. They prioritize safety, continuous improvement, and efficiency in collaborative delivery of services. These services make St. Albert a beautiful and desirable place to live. The key functions of this department include the delivery of services related to public works, fleet, facilities, and transit. Also included in this department is the utilities operations and waste management, which will be presented as a separate function following this presentation. The following slide is a summary of page 86 of the budget document and shows the overall impact of the 2026 projected budget for the Public Operations Department. Again, to reiterate, this does not include the utilities and waste management portion. The net impact is an increase of $811,000. Key highlights of this are, on the revenue side, an increase of $131,000 in sales and user fees due to an increase in transit utilization levels and rate changes. On the expense side, $620,000 increase in salaries, wages, and benefits due to the annualization of salaries and approved 2025 FTEs. $833,000 increase in contracted and general services, largely due to the increase in the transit contract, repairs and maintenance, janitorial services, and rentals and leases. $396,000 decrease in materials, goods, supplies, and utilities due to the decrease in the average fuel costs and supplies. $91,000 increase in transfer to and from operations for the internal recovery of building maintenance costs. Within the Public Operations Department, again, excluding the utilities and the solid waste, we are recommending 4 business cases for 2026. Details of these business cases can be found on the pages 105, 110, 121, and 130, respectively, of your budget documents. The first 3 asks are essentially to maintain our service delivery. The electronics technician would be responsible for troubleshooting all fleet and bus technology. This position, budgeted for $90,100, would look after all diagnostic equipment and platforms, in addition to the bus video system updates, and video server updates downloads, internally and externally, as well as oversight for vehicle and equipment, electronics, and diagnostic equipment. The second position, the facility services and maintenance supervisor position, for just over $100,000, oversees the maintenance and operations of our municipal facilities and buildings. Our current staffing levels are insufficient to ensure comprehensive coverage of all our building maintenance, and this position would fill this capacity. The outdoor amenities inspection and maintenance position, budgeted for just around $67,000, would inspect and repair outdoor amenities such as playgrounds, outdoor rinks, in alignment with our documented service levels due to our inventory growth. The space planning and security is a growth initiative business case intended to establish an operating fund for annual space and security investments to meet our current and future needs. The work for 2026 will include implementing security improvements and standardization across all City of St. Albert work sites, as well as conducting a space assessment review to inform a multi-year space plan. The following capital charters are recommended in the Community and Recreation Services and the Public Operations Department. Details of these business cases can be found on pages 55, 152, and 173 of the budget document. Public art. In accordance with Council Policy CFS01, there is an annual transfer from the Capital Reserve Fund to the Public Art Reserve Fund. Administration recommends that $268,500 be transferred to the Public Art Reserve Fund for future public art projects. The Neighborhood Park Development business case allows us to invest close to $1.5 million to provide recreation opportunities on municipal reserve lands in the new neighborhoods as they are built out. Work in 2026 will focus on Churro, Erin Ridge North Phase 2, Jensen Lakes, Northridge, Riverside, and South Real. The mobile equipment growth charter is to fund additional public operations equipment to meet service delivery timelines within the growing community. The request for 2026 is a pickup truck to support an HVAC position that was previously approved in 2025. This concludes my presentation for the operations portfolio. The directors and the teams along are here with me to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much for the presentation. We will start with questions by Councillor Bermanski.
Thank you, and thank you for presenting today and through the mayor. The first thing that I'd like to address would be the position for the space planning and security. So, let's shoot out. And it's mentioned here that the plan is an additional 200 staff over the next 10 years. And then it's also mentioned that you will be out of space for staff within 4 to 5 years by those projections. And if you're calculating, it's was also mentioned economic uncertainty, slowing of economy. So I'm just trying to digest here, and half of the staff, I guess, of that 200 are expected to need space. So that's essentially 100 people. So how do you align it when you're not really knowing what the economy is for, finding space? I just want clarification on what that role will actually do.
Yeah, a couple things, and I'll turn it over to Alex in a moment. It's not a role. It's actually funding to allow us to conduct the planning and the space improvements and security improvements. So we hired a security officer. We've got a space planning component of it. You're talking about the $200,000, right? And so that is essentially a pool of money that allows us to go beyond simply talking about these things to planning them and doing them. And so I just want to be clear, it's not a position that we're talking about.
I'm aware of that, yes.
In terms of the projected growth, it's a pretty wide projection, I'll be honest with you, right? I think we'll be able to start tightening it up as we get our organizational strategy online, in light of council's updated strategic plan next year. We'll have a better idea. But I can tell you now that we're close to full, right? And so, any additional growth is going to come with space requirements. And so this year we've implemented shared workspaces. We're doing a number of things, right, to mitigate it and ensure that we're using the space that we have efficiently. But at some point in time, we're going to have to look at what an expansion looks like. I would rather have a plan for that than do and forecast it than do it ad hoc. That's philosophically the background behind that. And please go ahead, Alex. Okay.
That's exactly what we're looking at for the next little while, is to actually figure out that we know that something's coming out there, but without really understanding the full context of it. This would give us an opportunity to kind of look at what those projections look like and to try and put in a multi-year space plan. And I have Mr. Saunders here to address specific questions if you have more.
Okay, and how is it divided between your security department? Because it's kind of like sort of two roles put together here.
I'm going to defer that question to Mr. Saunders.
Okay.
Sure, and thank you for the question. Through the mayor to Councillor Bermanski, we're working close with our human resources and safety director, Mr. Stovall. We've decided to put this into one area so that we could work together through it. A lot of the security concerns are going to be related to facilities at the space planning. So we felt that it did fit together quite well, but it is going to be in collaboration between the two groups.
Okay, thank you. And then my next question is with the mobile equipment, that's just the carryover, that's the standard across every year, correct?
Through the mayor to Councillor Bermanski, know that this is a specific ask for one pickup truck. In 2025, public operations, we added one FTE. It was an HVAC technician. For 2025, because the hiring wasn't going to be at the beginning of the year, we were able to implement a rental use and basically looking at any other opportunities. But for 2026 and onward, it is going to be a full year where we're going to need a vehicle for that employment, and it's more cost effective to have a purchased pickup truck as opposed to using a rental.
Okay, thank you. And my last question is the public art reserve. I know it was quite depleted last year and you're carrying, the 268 forward. Do you have an actual amount of how much is left in that public art reserve right now?
I'll probably have to refer to Ms. Finley to answer that question on the specifics.
Thank you.
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Bermansky, if you give me about 5 minutes, I will find out what the balance is in the reserve right now.
Okay, I appreciate it. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move to Councillor Patrick for questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Now this might be something, and correct me if this should be like a BIR, but I am referring to recreation and parks, and it's actually something that I'm not seeing in the budget and I'm wondering if it's in there somewhere that I'm not finding it. Do we have a budget for a safety strategy on our path system? Like like a little bit ago, we were talking about a lot of the safety on the roads and active transportation and calming, but do we address the safety on our path system? Is that an issue? Because I know just on my campaign, I heard that quite a bit. And so I was searching through here trying to find something on that, and I just don't see that in the budget. I don't know, maybe this should be a council inquiry or.
No, I think it's a legitimate question. Yeah, please go ahead. Bottom line is safety and security on our trail systems are a function of design and a function of also enforcement. And so I think I'll turn it over to Alex. He can direct it as needed.
So I think when we start designing, and part of this would be as we go through design pieces, we do have a SEPTED approach to making sure that designs are done in such a way that they are safety and enhanced. But like Mr. Fletcher said, there is a piece to it that is more on the enforcement side. I'll have Miss Podlobny to step in to answer anything specific to some of the concerns that you may have heard.
Through the chair to Councillor Patrick. So trails and parks are really a joint endeavor amongst our corporations. So we do participate in some safety exercises as we're doing park planning. We also collect park feedback as we work through, annual responses from our public operations team. We get responses through ourselves as well through the Recreation and Parks Department. And then there is a connection through also our municipal enforcement team, and we work with them as well as we get complaints. And our active transportation strategy has a component that deals strictly with active transportation on trails. And I'm not sure if Mr. Schick would have some additions to that, just because that is the active transportation component lives within his world. And so we have a member of our team that sits on the active transportation plans and the mobile strategy that we're building, a long-term strategy that way to address any of those concerns and build that out.
Thank you. Have we identified areas that maybe need something like a bump out or a speed bump? Is that something that is like that we could put on a path? I know my concern is e-scooters and e-bikes. And I heard from quite a few residents, specifically in the Erin Ridge area and near Real Park. Those two areas kept coming up where they said, with the corners and people coming around speeding. So just curious about that.
Through the chair to Councillor Patrick. Again, I would say that that's really a piece of our mobile strategy that we're working on right now. And so as we get concerns from residents, we try to address them. And I saw Mr. Schick popped up, so maybe that's a good opportunity for him to lean into that active transportation network and some of the learnings there. But we do try to either put up signage or increase awareness. We also do some campaigns through our social media annually just to remind people to be good stewards of our park spaces and share those spaces and be respectful. Certainly, e-scooters and some of the new equipment we're seeing is definitely changing the horizon on how we see people using our paths and trails. But I would ask Mr. Schick if he had any additions to that.
Thank you, Danielle. I don't really answer that really well. A lot of it right now is around messaging. I can add that through discussions with other communities, it is a consideration that's an issue that's being faced in a variety of different cities. And it aligns with the consideration of complete streets in terms of some of the accommodation for other active modes or micromobility like the e-scooters and whatnot within road right of way and dedicated areas. But where we have recreational facilities like multi-use trails, we try to use advanced warning signs like slowing down in areas of like maybe lower visibility curves and whatnot. But it's a lot of just messaging and trying to promote safe behavior and respectful behavior while using our safe trail systems.
Okay, thank you.
Is that all your questions, Councilor? Thank you. We'll move to Councilor Cortash for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to go back to the safety implementation budget case for a sec. A couple questions. First of all, is it correct that that's $200,000 per year moving forward? It's not a one-time expense, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And so then, thank you. Maybe just a little further clarification. I'm not really sure I followed exactly what it was for. Is it for actual physical improvements to buildings and safety features, or is it consultants? There's a comment in the report that says something along the lines of an individual was hired to do safety analysis, and then now they need this $200,000 in order to be able to do their work. And so I'm just trying to fully understand what that means.
So there's two phases to this. So one is with the hiring of the corporate security person. There are things that have come out that essentially require actual physical changes to the buildings that's related to safety. And then there's this piece around the space planning, which in 2026 is really focused on trying to figure out what that plan is going to look like. So the budget's going to be built in the way the budget's built is to look at enhancements as well as looking at, once we have a plan in place, how do we go about implementing the safety side of things? I'll ask Mr. Saunders to step in to talk about specifics as well.
Sure. And through the mayor to Councilor Cortash, the intention is for us to develop a plan for our spacing needs. We have a number of facilities that we lease, and we have a number of facilities that we lease out. And it is really to do an evaluation of the overall inventory, comparing that against what our growth, employee growth outlooks are going to be. In part, developing standards for office space and office needs so that we have something that can be education, knowledge, so that we can bring those recommendations forward. As had been noted, there is the security component, and there is going to be tangible improvements that are made, whether that is camera systems, as an example, in our recycling facility, or areas where we have security concerns that we can then implement some of the tactics that are needed.
Okay, so it sounds like it's part physical construction and part planning. For the physical building improvements, is there a reason why it's in operating and not a capital expense? Maybe I'm just misunderstanding that.
I think at this point in time, as we look at like tenant improvements, those do fall under the operating charter. Okay. But we're not looking at huge capital infrastructure builds. This would be looking at our existing areas and looking at lease options possible. Again, we're still in that very infancy of trying to figure out what this plan is going to look like.
Yeah, and I think maybe if I could just follow up on that, Councillor, I think a lot of this in the early days will be planning, right? It's going to be completing assessments, ensuring planning, and then having a little bit to start doing some stuff with. And in fulsome course, if there was a significant issue, that would come as a capital ask, right? At the end of the day, if it's small things, perhaps this might evolve such that it could be a capital issue. In this case, though, we want to have some quick wins, in particular on the security front, right? And so, key cards, cameras, those types of things are generally small scale, right? They're generally sort of easily done. They would be based on the assessment that we have to do. And that's why we're just, trying to get a source that we can actually start doing things as opposed to,
okay.
And I don't mean this in a pejorative sense previously, but admiring the problem. Yeah.
Sorry, I missed.
Oh, admiring the problem, right? Is we want to get beyond that.
I guess then, sorry, that leads to a couple more questions. So this is the corporate security specialist has identified some needs here, and so this is additional work that they're not able to accommodate in their role. This is, they're going to be hiring this out, or it's consultant. It's when you say for planning purposes, that money for planning is, I don't know, I just assume that's consulting.
It's a little A, a little B, right?
Okay,
So
alright.
it's one person, and we've asked them to look at the entirety of the city market. Like they could do it. It would probably take 10 years, right? And so there is a little bit of that, you know.
That was going to be my next question, is the $200,000 a year for a number of years. That's a lot of planning. That's the estimate to do all of the city facilities and to do all of it's not just public operations. Is that all city facilities?
The intent is to look at all of our City of St. Albert sites and then see what works. It's not just limited to public operations.
And Mr. Fletcher, you'd said 10 years, maybe, like, is this a 10-year program, or is this an ongoing, like, indefinite $200,000 a year?
I see
until we
this
build a new building.
going on. I'll use an example. You know, we've recently reconfigured some space here in St. Albert Place to consolidate staff, right? And so actually to minimize our footprint, to allow the expansion of policing services who were busting at the seams. It was a $300,000 endeavor. Right. So none of this is inexpensive. It achieves efficiency in terms of space use, right? But it costs money to implement. And so this is, let's come up with a plan. Let's look at what the forecast is, and then let's cost it out. And then within reason, what can we use this money to actually implement?
Okay, thank you. Public art. I wasn't prepared for public art questions. Is public art is it now that, okay, some people in front of me, I'm going to come back to that.
Thank you. We'll go to Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. I just have a few questions. So the ticket art and ticketing, I know that there was an increase. We had an adjustment in the third quarter last year and we increased it slightly. I don't know what the budgeted amount we were estimating for this year and for what it ended up being this year and what we're estimating for next year. And if you want, I can come back to it and let you guys.
I was going to say, well, the team's doing that. They can answer your previous or the previous question I think Councillor Bermansky had.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, so through the chair to Councillor Bermansky, currently the balance in the public art reserve is 612,000. However, sorry, and I had it and I lost it. However, only 40 of that is uncommitted. And then the other 572,000 is committed for maintenance of existing public art that is in inventory.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll go to the next question. You guys can get to it when you want to. Also, and you may want to look up this one as well, Suzanne. So the value of the dog license reserve, because I don't know what it's at right now, but we have that dog park. And so what I'm wondering is, I'm guessing it's 800,000 based on zero facts. I'm just pulling out a number and I think that that's the number it is. I could be wrong. But what I'm wondering is the dog park that we have listed here, I think is for 1.6 million. And so is there an opportunity to do a lesser dog park with the funds that we have, as opposed to either having to finance it or delay the ability to do it? So maybe not you, maybe it's Danielle I need to talk to, Mr. Fletcher, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, well, the team can sort of look up the value of the reserve. Perhaps I'd ask Alex and Danielle to weigh in on the actual dog park itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to defer this to Ms. Padlabdini.
Sure.
Okay, if I can actually get my camera started here, sorry.
It's all good.
There we go. So the dog park project is planned for next year, and we're actually working on some drainage items right now at that dog park. So we're working with engineering because there's some drainage coming from the future community amenities site, but also future road development. So we're just still affirming that is the appropriate spot for the dog park. So that project is still planned for 27 as of right now. But as we keep working through the utilities work on that site, we may actually defer that another year just to see if that's going to be the right location and approach. But in the interim, we do work with finance when we're putting forward a capital charter to talk about what is available funds. There could be an opportunity for us to do a scaled back approach, but it is quite a large site if that's the site we select. It's about 14 acres, I believe, so it's quite a large site. And you have to do things like parking and also amenities there to make sure that the users have their needs met while they're on the site. So I would say that is something we could take away, is look at a couple of different levels, but certainly we're looking at another year or two before we're ready to put forward a charter for council consideration.
Okay, because it's in the unfunded for this year coming up. So
because it's unfunded, we are leaving it in the unfunded category, but we were going to push it back anyhow. So we'll push it into a 27 charter because we're still doing the utilities work anyhow.
Okay.
I would say we'd want to wait and push that out to 27.
Okay. So because I know you're doing the surveys for that now, but the public doesn't think it's going to be made tomorrow next year then, right? Because I think that the public might think that right now.
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, I think we've been really honest with the public that whenever we do engagement, we're pretty transparent that this is based on funding and when the timing is appropriate for us to progress on that project. We also want to make sure we're aligning it with the future road development, community amenities. There's lots of factors on that site we want to make sure that the site is prepared for. So we're pretty transparent with public that we were just engaging with what their desires on should and when that site be ready for development. We also are currently working on some small enhancements to our other sites to ensure the best use of those sites. So a small dog area at Dodger, and we've really seen great use of the small dog area at Lacombe, and really seen an increased usage actually at Dodger and Campbell. So trying to really promote the use of our other sites to keep our dog population kind of spread out throughout the community.
So what are we thinking we're going to be putting in this new park that comes to 1.6 million? Because if let's just say your average Joe on their street, right? You say, we're putting a dog park, and they're like, okay, you can have grass, you can have a fence. And then like, how did you come up with 1.6 million? Like, so can you I know you haven't made the designs, but tell me what you can.
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, maybe I'll give you a high level, and then Mr. Cameron is on the line as well. And this is one of his projects, so I'll let him add to anything he wants. It's a lot about fencing and land work. There's a stormwater pond, so we have to restrict access to the stormwater from pets. So we have to do some more fencing on that site. There is a need for parking and some other trail work through the site. So it is a lot of land work, but it's also a lot of fencing and infrastructure build in. And, we did do that through the concept. We have some conceptual costing from the consultant that's been doing the work with us, and we're just continuing to advance that project. The project costing will get tighter as it normally does through all of our capital enhancements as we move further along through the design process. And with that, I'd ask Mr. Cameron if there's anything I've missed on that front. And I don't see him popping up, so I'm going to assume that's good enough.
Good. Yeah, because you're thinking community amenities site to put this dog park on. Is that what I'm hearing? You're thinking, or no?
No, through the chair to Council, it's actually just north of the community amenities site. So it's actually right on the corner of Villeneuve and 260. And it's just north of community amenities. And I guess the nice part of the future of that is there's some opportunity to share amenities there. So there's opportunity for shared parking and washrooms in the long term. So I think thinking about more temporary infrastructure like porta potties on that site, because we would see once community amenities gets developed in some way, shape, or form, there would be a way to use the amenities on that site instead of building them at the dog park.
Okay, so when I look at what you're planning to do with things like fences, which are not like negotiable that much in pricing, I think it's difficult to bring down that price. Just my guess at this moment is it's going to be difficult to fit in. I don't know what the reserve is at, but I'm guessing it's not 1.6 million. So, but okay.
I would defer to finance on the reserve, but when we had conversations with Miss Finley and Miss Victor, we did talk about using the dog reserve as a source of funding. We have used the dog reserve a few times in the last few years to support things like the enhanced work at Lacombe Dog Park or the work at Dodger. We also did some improved signage at our off-leash areas throughout the city to better kind of educate and inform our public when they're using our dog spaces for good park stewardship.
Okay. And the other thing I don't know, I'm just trying, whenever I've gone to the dog park, and I haven't gone a lot of times, just as a caveat, but whenever I've gone to the dog park, it just seems that the grass is like near death, if not, on life support. So, do we do anything to try to like bring it back to life or anything? Because I just feel like there's a lot of brown going on there. And, so what do we do on that? Or do we?
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, I would probably defer this to my colleague, Mr. Saunders, because he's the one who takes care of our grass in the community, him and his team. But I know it is a challenge on dog park sites. There's a lot of activity on those sites, and dogs leave behind little presents all over, and they sometimes deter also the health of the grass. So there are some challenges maintaining grass and turf on dog parks, but I would look to Mr. Saunders to talk about any of the enhancements he's doing on those dog park sites.
And through the chair to Councillor Hughes, it is another area that we do look after. The last few years have been very challenging for our turf because of the drought conditions that we've seen. Dog parks, they have an additional constraint that access is limited sometimes. And to actually do a proper fertilization, we would have to restrict access. So it's not an easy struggle that we go through. But it is acknowledged, and usually with a more wet season, it does often take care of itself.
Okay, so we're kind of just
in saying that, it's part of our normal turf maintenance program, but it's a tough location. I also have a dog in my backyard, struggles with the exact same issues.
So I'm wondering, like, is there no opportunity just to say we're going to close it for 3 days or something and then fertilize or something like that? Or have we ever tried that?
I would have to take that away. I could, we do have Ms. Stewart on the call today, and she could maybe speak to some of our past practices has been prior to my joining the department.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you. I'm just wondering, do you have those numbers or?
Yep. Oh, shoot. Louise is here.
Oh, hello, Louise.
Hello, thank you for the question, Councillor Hughes. So yeah, I mean, dog parks are they're exceptionally popular in our community, and so therefore they're exceptionally busy. So in conjunction with Rec and Parks, there's certainly been some improvements, creating the small dog area, the large dog area, trying to improve the gate system and the ground that the people are walking on. But yes, we've never actually discussed the prospect of closing them down for a few days. I think we would like to have a little more inventory, and I think that's where the new park comes in, that we could then potentially ask people to go there while we try and rehab. But when they're exceptionally busy, it's really hard to keep the grass growing. People will find their own way through into the nice areas of it, and then as they go there, then some of the other areas that are a little more compacted can grow back. We can aerate. It's just, if we're shutting it down, we're shutting it down for about the hour that we need to go in and do something, and then we'll open it back up because they're all very busy.
So, and this is just a thought while we're just having this discussion, is last year when we were talking about all the weeds, et cetera, and in that discussion, we were discussing clover, and apparently like you can pee on that stuff and it doesn't die. You can put Javex in it, it won't die. So is there been a thought about putting a different type of turf or even clover on there that would allow it to stay greener and, you know, is extremely hardy?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Hughes. Absolutely. We have done clover trials in various parts of the city for a number of years now. We've actually had limited success. So the residents that can very much control what goes on their front yard have far more success than we do trying to put it in areas where people are used. So there are different seed types. There's different grass seeds other than clover, which are capable of handling a little more of the traffic. And that's what we are getting our developers and our contractors to use. Clover takes a long time to establish. And even then it's getting beaten pretty good for the time being. But we've tried it on some of the naturalized areas on our boulevards or some of the areas that we have to block a lane of traffic in order to maintain. We've put clover in there. We've had a limited success. It's not been hugely successful for us, but we keep working with our friends in the landscape industry to try and find solutions.
Okay, it is a difficult one to do, right? Like the popularity is what kills it. Okay, thank you for that. I don't have more questions about that. I'm wondering about, with regards to Service Place, we had the marketing specialist that was approved last year. I'm just wondering what the status is of that project.
So as I queue up Ms. Padlobny to do that, we're in the midst of getting some of the customer feedback, like in terms of what that representation is going to look like, and then putting that into place into what that marketing study looks like. Ms. Padlobny?
Thanks. Through the chair to Councillor Hughes. Maybe I'll give a little bit of an intro, and then if Mr. Pearson wants to add anything as well, he can certainly do that. So the first phase is currently underway. Really what we're trying to do is deepen our understanding of who currently uses Service Place and why, and where are our missing gaps of where we can encourage people to start using Service Place, maybe where those a bit of a gap analysis. And we're going to complete that work in Q1 of 2026. So that's phase one. The second phase of research will engage a market research company to determine that gap analysis, and then it'll be developing a targeted marketing campaign to increase usage. So we'll see that full implementation come through 26, and we're just going to carry forward any of the funds that were provided for that work. But I think we felt it was really important to do that legwork and understanding of our customer base before we kind of dove into putting out a campaign. We want to make sure that that money is used wisely, and we'll really hit the narrative on who's not using the facility and how can we encourage that usage of the facility.
So has the work today been done as just in-house, or have we actually contracted any work out?
We contracted some work out to a local consulting firm, and so they've been doing some work on building these customer profiles for us.
Okay, so when I look at the capital project charter for the Union Place facility reassessment, I'm trying to grasp specifically what this, can you just expand on this in just layman's terms and pretend I'm 3 and explain to me what we're going to be doing?
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes. So really what Service Place assessment is to do is to take, in 2010, Service Place was done, and it was called the Plan for the Future, and it was the next steps of what Service Place could look like and what the opportunities were there. And so what we want to do is in alignment with us completing work, and we're doing the schematic planning at community amenities. We also want to talk about what's at Service Place and what could be some opportunities at that facility in the coming decade. So does that mean we could, as an alternative, add some pool space, add an arena onto that site? We have done some of that legwork in the past, but we want to reaffirm knowing what our current needs are based on our recreation needs assessment. Does that still hold true? Has there been any significant changes? We also have done a recent assessment on Grosvenor. So it's our intent to bring back to council next year kind of a summary of facility plans. And this is maybe a bad analogy, but at choose your own adventure. So council, if you want to go this way with community amenities, we could do this. If you don't want to do community amenities in this format, we could phase this and do this at Service Place. It just will give council some options to talk through. And there's some opportunities for us to align existing infrastructure at Service Place to possibly have some enhancements, I guess, facility enhancements in the future. With that, I also have my Senior Manager of Programs and Services, Tim Harris, on the line. Tim, if you want to add anything to that in terms of what that scope and scale of work will include, you're welcome to join that in as well to provide clarity.
Thanks, Danielle. No, I think you mostly hit it. I think it really is about assessing what we have with community amenities, and if what the future look of community amenities turns out to be, then that'll influence on what we could do on those other sites. But yeah, so that's our plan, I think, is then to come back with those 3 elements next year and look at Grosvenor, look at service, and look at the community amenities projects and see how council wants us to take them forward.
So we approved a $3 million, or I think it was 3 million for the community amenities site earlier. Couldn't we just use that money to include this? It's 75,000 on a $3 million bill. Do we actually need this project charter to actually look at the synergies, or can we just continue with the community amenities site and expect this to be included in it?
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes, we've actually talked with executive leadership about this because it didn't make the funded list within the Service Place, and it is a small dollar value. So what we had discussed is taking it out of operating and pay to complete that work for the Service Place assessment, because that really will give that next decade view of our facilities for council to consider. We wouldn't take it out of community amenities only because that's scope for that project specifically, but we think out of operating, we can fund that work that needs to be done, and then come back to you next year with updates on all of those kind of components so you can really help us garner out what you want to see for the next decade in rec facility development in St. Albert.
So we couldn't expand the scope of the current project to just look at the full
Absolutely. Through the chair to councillors, we could, but I think we're quite comfortable paying for it out of operating in my conversations with Mr. Dinu and with Mr. Fletcher. So it sounds like that will be the approach. And then we can make sure to tackle that project and bring the whole robust look back to council.
We'd essentially recommend doing it through a carry forward, councillor, right? And so as opposed to a new charter, we use current money that we've already got and do it that way. Yeah, you could alter the scope of the 3 million. Would it fit in there? Would it not? We haven't done that analysis, to be perfectly honest with you, right? It's possible we could expend the whole 3 million on the design.
So if we don't bring this forward now, then I guess, are we looking at just funding it through the carry forward?
That's my recommendation. Absolutely. It would
Okay.
be, we'd come forward with a carry forward saying here's 75,000 to do this work. It's our intention to do it.
Okay, so we can really just let this one
That's correct.
lie and it will finish itself off with us. Okay, that's good to know. Also, and I'm looking at you number girls. First of all, what do you got for me so far?
Through the mayor to Councillor Hughes, in regards to art and theater sales, we have a 225 budget was 400K. And so the 226 is 385,000. We're forecasting year to date in 2025, 350,000. That's related to volume, but I would defer to Ms. Budd for any further explanation if you have questions on the variance.
So what I'm thinking of, Anna, and this may not be the specifics we're thinking of, is that in the third quarter last time, we said because we changed something with ticketing of like the ownership, that there was going to be like $130,000 more was what we received in the third quarter of last year. So it may not be in that larger, it might be separated out of that number. And so we increased the budget to 90,000 from, I think it was like 30 or 40 before, but not the full amount, but just somewhat to cover it. And I'm just wondering if that extra gap happened or what, because it was the first year. So that's why I said we'll come in a bit more conservative. So I can do this as a BIR because I don't know if you have those numbers specifically, or.
I would defer to Ms. Budd if she's online.
Okay.
Okay. If she's not, we can take.
If she's not, then I can leave it and we'll find out.
Yes, thank you for the question through to Councillor Hughes. So we had identified that there would be more money. So we identified that through miscellaneous revenue. Last year, our actuals within the miscellaneous revenue were $150,000. To date, we've received just under 70,000, and we are currently forecasting that we will end the year at 125,000. And for next year, we've budgeted $150,000 of revenue in that line.
Okay, so you've covered it. So that's good. I don't need to worry about that one. Thank you. The dog park, thank you for that, Ms. Budd. So the dog park, do we have those numbers yet on what's in the reserve?
So the balance in the dog license reserve is 499,000.
It's less than I thought. Okay. And how much are we putting in a year? Is it like 80,000 a year is coming in-ish? It's okay if you don't have that number right now off the top of your head, but that's what that's what I thought it was. But I could be completely wrong.
If you give us a minute, we'll look at the schedule.
Okay. That, yeah, that's okay for that. And the other one, I don't know, and I can leave this to you guys later again, because I know you're kind of scrambling, Suzanne, is the deficit on the service place. So we had it down to, what was it, 1.5 million in the deficit? And I'm just wondering how our deficit is looking for this year and what our projection is for next year.
I'm going to defer that to Ms. Budlubny.
Through the chair to Councillor Hughes. So we did last year in 2025, we reflected originally, I think it was a $1.8 million deficit on the facility. And then there were two council motions that were added in for $170,000 increase, which made it around a $1.6 million deficit.
Yeah.
Currently proposed for the budget for 2026 is a $1.3 million deficit on the facility. So it's an improvement of $300,000 on the bottom line improvement over 2025. And it is in alignment a little bit ahead of our Q3 forecast for 2025. So right now our Q3 forecast is sitting a little bit above 1.4. So we're actually pushing our revenues with some rate increases and some small increases throughout, and looking for a $1.3 million community investment next year.
You guys are all ahead of me this time, I tell you. You're doing great. So thank you for all of that. I think I had one other question, Mayor, just give me 1 second. I made a big box around it because I kept forgetting to ask it. it goes back, if that's okay, like to the previous, like Adrian, I'm looking at you now. Okay, the Lakeview neighborhood, you have the NSP coming. And I was trying to figure out how we would do an NSP if we don't know who's going to be on that land yet. Because like if we do an NSP for a neighborhood, we know there's going to be houses here and a store here, yada, yada, yada. But for the neighborhood NSP that we have for one of the business cases or purpose charters, it says, so I was like, how would we know what we're putting there if we don't know who's going to be there yet?
So I can maybe try to kick this off, and then maybe Mr. Erickson wants to jump
Okay.
in. But I think the idea is that you start with high-level principles about what you want to see from a development perspective. Economic development has already had conversations with site selectors and industry folk who have given ideas of what works and what doesn't from an industrial lands perspective. So from that, I think that you can, again, start at a high level and identify where your arterial roads and all that stuff are going to fit within the neighborhood plan to kind of build out the rest of it. And then you move on to the more detailed layers where you're talking about your subdivisions and your redistricting and things of that nature.
Okay. So is it going to be kind of like the major focus will just be the roads as opposed and that like that level, but not lot sizes or stuff like that, obviously.
I see Mr. Erickson is
Yeah,
on
Mr.
now,
Erickson.
so
How you doing, Mike?
maybe Mike, if you want to go ahead and speak to the neighborhood plan and how we proceed.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Slatt. It is a planning exercise. It is intended to help us have a well-informed, educated, projection or plan for what will be in place. The one thing that I might add, and I probably should have mentioned this with the previous question around this, is we're in a situation where, because we do have interest in these lands, we are having active conversations with private development groups and end users. So we're trying to almost sort of run two processes in parallel. But of course, it's not the entire 600 acres won't be built out in a single year. So trying to plan for, many years down the road as well.
So is the NSP just on our land, or is it for the other pieces of land that we're currently servicing as well? Because like the servicing capabilities will be beyond just the land that we own, right? So how far is the NSP going? Like I feel like I think it's just our land, if I'm remembering correctly, but am I wrong?
So this neighborhood plan would be for the entirety of Lakeview, which includes all of the privately held lands. We've already formed work on the city's lands with respect to neighborhood planning.
Okay.
So if I can just jump in, the idea behind that is, again, just to remove hurdles or barriers to people entering our market. So when we looked at it, we kind of identified that if somebody wants to come in, even though we have the industrial lands and even though we have servicing across the road, it still doesn't give them the ultimate confidence, or really, they can't just come in and develop, which is what a lot of them want to do, if they still have to go through neighborhood plan exercise, which is going to take a better part of a year. So we, as a group, I guess, identified the need to take care of that piece of red tape, if you will, so that somebody else can come in and have more certainty around what the expectations are, and then get into the whole game of looking at subdivisions and redistricting to fit their needs.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, and I think this is good news, is that we're first of all trying to facilitate getting these lands developed, which is great. And we will have sort of an idea, at least for some of the areas, because obviously all 600 acres you will not know upfront. So, okay. Yeah, because because the neighborhoods, let's say to the south, which will be later developed, will the NSP kind of just say future development then? Or because we don't want to restrict the ability, like if somebody wanted a really big lot to handle something versus a narrower one, like we don't want to tap it off right away. So is it going to kind of, I guess that's all I'm wondering, is just how we're going to, a little bit about how we're going to manage the NSP to handle that flexibility.
So again, I'll start and then Mr. Erickson, feel free to jump in. So the idea is basically from the industrial lands at Old Meadowview all the way north, that there will be more certainty around what can happen there. So if somebody comes in on the south side or on the north side, they'll have an opportunity to come in without having to go through that step. And we'll just bake in a little bit of flexibility into the whole process or into the whole plan so that hopefully if somebody of an industrial nature wants to come in, most of their needs can be met through the neighborhood plan that we approve.
All right, and it makes sense to me. Thank you for that, because that was the one question I had. And so any of the developers that are watching, like, look, we're rolling everything out here to make this as simple as possible for everybody. So I appreciate that foresight of trying to make sure that we don't have unnecessary barriers to achieving success. That's all I have for questions. Thank you.
Through the mayor to Councillor Hughes, I have the balance of the annual transfer into the dog license reserve is 93,000. That is reflected, that 499 is the year end, like forecasted uncommitted balance at the end of 25. So the annual transfer in is 93K.
I wasn't too far off with 80, just, spitballing. So, okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hughes. We'll move to Councillor Bermansky for questions.
And thank you. I'll be really quick again here. Back to the space planning. I just wanted to know if it's incorporated into the asset management tracking that you're going to be implementing.
I'll defer this to Mr. Saunders.
Okay.
To talk about it, but in general, as he queues up to come on board, is that as we're looking at all the spaces and facilities, we are putting it as part of the asset management process and seeing but that'll be independent of what these upgrades look like.
And that would be 3 departments kind of working together or 3 areas?
I'll let Mr. Saunders respond to that.
Sure. And through the chair to Councillor Bermansky, so the answer is yes, the facilities will be built into our enterprise asset management and maintenance management software, CityWorks. So the facility services team within public operations, we oversee the vast majority of the facilities for all the departments across the city. So it will be consolidated, I guess, as far as an asset through our team, as well as some of the other asset owners such as Rec and Parks for facilities. But so yes, it will be part of that. It will be built into EMAM as well as all of the features of the facility assets. It is one of the later phases as we are implementing CityWorks in a phased approach across assets. But to answer your question, yes, it will be built into EMAM.
But maybe just as a follow on that'll be the facility in terms of its life cycle. will not forecast the space use of that, right? But it'll help inform our decisions on space use, if that makes sense. Yeah.
But they would be the experts of what's out there.
They would know what's out there, what condition it is, what could be appropriate or inappropriate in terms of the use, right? And what investment might be needed. Absolutely. The ultimate decision on what that space would be used for, right, would ultimately lie. That's an operational decision. And a forecast of staffing and use would not be MM. It would be informed by our asset management knowledge.
Okay, thank you. And sorry, one more question for Danielle Pudlovy on the dog park. I got distracted on the dog park, so I have one question here. She's still here?
I am.
Okay. Okay, so my question is, it was mentioned during the environmental committee that the dog park, along the river there, the water testing of the Sturgeon River in that particular area was not great, and it could have been as a result from the dog park so close to the river. When you develop new dog parks, would you be like changing the locations of some that are not maybe an ideal place at all? And being that the new one is near a storm water pond, would that and a drainage factor area, would that all be looked into as you're developing that park?
So through the chair to Councillor Bermansky, thanks for the question. Maybe I'll start, but I want to be cautious to also leave some space for Mr. Dooley to speak about environmental concerns and also Mr. Saunders to speak about utilities. So when we talk about utilities and putting dog parks in utilities, we actually already have one. So Dodger Dog Park is actually based in a dry storm pond. And so when we're looking at our dry storm ponds, it's a really great way to use that space because otherwise it would just sit vacant. So it doesn't seem to be an issue from a utilities perspective. When we are looking at new spaces for dog parks and off-leash areas, we build those into our park plans as we're building out in our new neighborhood park charter. And so we do vet those plans as we build them out with all of our colleagues across departments in the organization. So environment, public operations, many other departments will take a look at our park plans and provide us feedback if they have any concerns with the location of the sites. At this time, we really haven't investigated taking any sites off of our list at this point. And we would look to the lead of our other departments if there was a concern they wanted to bring forward and address and either through council direction or we could bring that back through that process. But I guess I would look to Mr. Dooley or Mr. Saunders if they had any adds to that as well.
I think I'd just add that, Rec and Parks is kind of the lead. We become more sophisticated, I think, organizationally in the last couple of years in terms of how we plan for dog parks. And so environment is represented and provides that perspective in the planning process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. We'll move to Councillor Cortash for questions.
Okay, thank you. I'll come back to public art. So just a couple of quick questions there. On page 39 and 41 of the budget, it mentions a decrease in art transfers or a decrease in part because of reduced art transfers. But I note there is a contribution according to the public art policy. So maybe just if you could explain what that meant in terms of decreases in art transfers.
Yeah, I'll as I queue up the team to get specifics on this one from Ms. Budd, I'm going to ask Ms. Finley to talk about the specifics around the transfers.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Cortash. So what typically happens in a year is that every year certain art projects are approved. They're approved to be funded from the Public Art Reserve, and they are approved by council. So once a project is approved, it moves from it as an operating project, and it moves as a one-year operating project. For 225, they would have had projects that were approved to be funded from the Art Reserve. However, those are one-year projects, and so they don't carry into the next year. So effectively what happens is that you have funding from the Public Art Reserve that offsets the expenses for those particular projects. You have them in 1 year, but you don't have them moving into the next year.
Thank you. Okay. Shoot, I had another art question and I lost it. Okay, I'll come back to that. The art, oh, I know what it was. In the art policy, the public art policy, it looks like it's a fairly recent policy. I'm not familiar with the background. But how is it looks like on a move forward basis, it's funded just based on what it was last year plus inflation. Is that correct? Where does that number come? Where does the number come from?
Through the chair to Councillor Cortash, I can start on that. The public art policy has actually, I think, been around for a number of years. Effectively, 10, 15 years ago, what happened was that a percentage of all of the capital projects had a public art component. That was then changed in maybe 2018 or 19, I'm not sure actually. And from there, what we used to do is it started out with a base amount, and then there was an annual inflation. So when the policy was updated in 2024, what happened was we took the base amount that was there from before, and we just do an annual inflation based on that.
Okay, thank you. I've got a few questions around capital budgeting. Let me just get the right page here. Maybe just a process question first in terms of I think it's done at a different time of year. I remember reading that somewhere in terms of what's funded and unfunded. Where does that decision get made in terms of funded and unfunded?
So in regards to the capital budget, there's numerous touch points with council through the year. So it starts with the repair, maintain, replace budget that gets approved it goes to SCOW usually in May and then gets approved in June. So that's in your budget document. I will refer to what page it is. And then when we go through then what's going forward for the growth capital, we use a capital prioritization matrix that measures a number of factors: risk, links to strategic plan, alignment to service levels, numerous factors, regulatory, legislative. And so based on that prioritization, that happens throughout with collaboration with all the departments. And then it gets further vetted with executive team and leadership team based on funding availability. We do further scrutiny and evaluation. And then you'll see that on page, I believe it is 56 of your plan. We look forward and try to prioritize 4 to 5 years out. So you'll see 4 years that we've factored in our available funding, potential grants we're getting, and what our debt capacity is. And that will then determine our recommendation in front of you today. Of course, we're asking for 1 year, but we've shown 4 years just to kind of show that multi-year prioritization that's been done internally.
Council also has a chance to see it over the course of the strategic planning, both in terms of the creation of the strategic plan in year 1 and then ultimately. And so council has the opportunity, notwithstanding our recommendation and the prioritization we go under, which is informed specifically by, being legislatively compliant and council strategic priorities. Council also has the ability to influence it and make direction on kind of what you want to see as a priority over the course of that as well.
Okay, thanks. So the RMR capital was approved by council in the spring, and then the growth capital is essentially part of this budget process, or the growth, okay.
No,
And
that
so-
is correct.
Okay, thank you. So then what happens, again, just a kind of a process question. So for example, take the dog-friendly development, it's an unfunded capital growth plan, $1.7 million. So it's unfunded for 2026. What happens to that? Where does it go? Does it just get pushed forward a year?
Yeah, so when you see them on the unfunded list, they will then get deferred and postponed into the next year for consideration to be vetted in that prioritization matrix. But that's where we've presented that multi-year to see that is likely going to remain unfunded in that horizon, unless then council does decide to motion that and direct administration to change that or fund.
But there's also the rationalization of the 10-year plan, which I think is probably speaks a little bit to what you're talking about, all right? So when it does come to council, how do you remove something off the list? We can't. It's council's 10-year capital plan. And so those discussions do happen about, okay, this is been overtaken by events, no longer relevant. We don't think this is in line with the new priorities, right? Those opportunities exist too for council to say, all right, let's strike this from the plan. Otherwise it stays there. And it'll keep staying there until you take it off or it gets funded at some point in time. Yeah.
And as for the unfunded projects on the capital growth plan, so the budget contains descriptions of the funded or the recommended funded growth plans, but not for the unfunded ones, right? So if I have questions about some of the unfunded projects and what they entail, is now an appropriate time to ask about those, or should that be separate from this?
Through the chair to Councillor Cortash, actually, all of the project charters for the unfunded are within the, for 2026. If you go to page 58, you should be able to click on the links and go to the capital charters. For those ones, any ones that are further out, I believe have been put onto the council website for your review.
So you said on page 50.
Or 59, I
So
apologize.
if I'm on page 59 right now, and there's supposed to be links there?
If you go to the left-hand column, you should be able to click on each of those projects.
Like, for example, rec, are they not working?
Oh, they might not work on your.
Perhaps,
tablet.
maybe I need to, and then, so those are in the,
I apologize. They're also, if you go down, they may start around page 177 of the budget document, 176, 177 onwards.
Okay, I must have.
No, this is not you, Counselor. Apparently, there are only links to the prioritized ones on page 56, and so, yeah. But I think the point.
But they are in there.
They
so
all exist on the council website.
If I want to see what St. Anne pedestrian improvements are, Perron Street pedestrian improvements, that's in here somewhere.
That is correct.
Okay.
And if you can open up the bookmarks on the left-hand side, they should have them, they'll have them there. Any for 2026 will be in there.
Okay, I'll take a look at that in a bit. Hang on. Hold on. Maybe just one more and I'll have a look at that. And if I have more questions, we can decide what we're doing tomorrow. Just had a question about soccer. I received a letter from the soccer folks saying that phase 1 of their plan was approved by council. I don't really know what that plan is. I don't know much about it other than what I read in the paper. Are there any budget implications for whatever St. Albert Soccer is doing this year? Nothing? No? Okay. Okay, that's all for now.
We can give you a more fulsome answer if you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get Ms. Padlovny to talk about the particular project and what's been funded through council so far and what that plan looks like.
Through the mayor to Councillor Coratash. So St. Albert Soccer did approach the city with interest to develop a 7v7 facility on their site, their lease site, which is in Riel Recreation Park. They have a nominal lease, which has a building and sports fields, and they wanted to develop a 7v7 indoor training facility on their land. They approached the city to look at investing in building that infrastructure and potentially some funding sources to support that development. Council has asked us to go back and do some legwork with them and return to you when we have some more information that we can then present options for council's consideration if you'd like to consider funding some of that development. So we'll be returning to you once we get some more legwork with St. Albert Soccer. We continue to meet and work with them as they're moving that project forward. And we will be coming back to council once they meet a certain level and threshold of information that we require to bring back to you to consider.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Councillor Patrick.
Thank you, Mayor. My question, I'm going back to the dog park. And Councillor Coratash actually asked, I was going to ask about the unfunded, how it was unfunded and how to go about that. But one thing that I do still want to know on that is the specifics around a new dog park. Do we know, is there plans for fountains within the dog park that would accommodate dogs and humans? There is not? Okay. Okay.
And then just to follow up, Councillor Patrick, if you want details on the prioritization and what was considered in the prioritization matrix, page 54 of your budget has the details of what we've considered in that capital prioritization to determine what's funded and unfunded.
Okay. And then do we have, and I'm not sure if I'm asking this in the right context. So I know I keep talking about water fountains, but I use the paths a lot, and this is something that I think is really important, and I've heard that is important, that we just don't have enough water fountains. Where would I find, if that's in the budget, whether we have, is that an ad that we have at all? Like Lions Park, for example, doesn't have a water fountain. Is that something that I'm just missing in here, or just not? That's a future.
I'll take a start and we can go. And so you wouldn't find it as a line item in the budget, right? Water fountains, it's essentially an infrastructure issue related to an amenity or to something else like that. And so it would be part and parcel likely of the charter, right? And the requirements for that. So in this case, you're talking about, trails principally. I'll turn it over to Alex and then perhaps the engineering, rec and parks and public operations teams.
Yeah, as Ms. Padlovny gets on board, so a lot of this is like, we wouldn't see the line items. What we would be trying to look at is what that need looks like for specific trails and parks, and build that into the design pieces. I'll have Ms. Padlovny expand on that. And
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Patrick. So water fountains, lighting, there's some other amenities that we're looking at in terms of how we manage those within our parks and trails system. So for a good example, water fountains are typically found at our city parks, and Lions Park, to your point, is going through a bit of a rebuild. So we're going to actually do some design this year through the RMR Charter for outdoor facilities. We will be doing a redesign on Lions Park. And we do look for those city access sites and routine places along our trail system for there to be water access. But we do know that it's hard to maintain. We want to make sure that they've got certain sight lines and prevent vandalism. So we don't provide them everywhere along our parks and trails, but we're very strategic in our location of those. Same with washrooms and porta potties. So there's a whole strategy behind that we're going to give a bit more detail to, but it does belong in our parks and open spaces standards in terms of water access. And we look to align that to city parks. But to your point on Lions Park, we are doing a bit of a design element this year coming up in 26 and look for future design implementation and construction to happen at Lions Park. So should see some of those amenities kind of follow through there.
Perfect. Thank you. I have no more questions.
I just want to follow up on that question regarding water access as well as like portable washrooms. We're seeing those at certain soccer fields and at some specific parks, but are we going to look to expand that? Because some of the community feedback is to increase engagement or longer term engagement in the park system in St. Albert would be a great addition to have, washrooms available. But have we done analysis on that of what that cost would be to the community?
To the mayor, we do have a porta potty program in the city. So it was funded by council a number of years ago. And Mr. Saunders, maybe you have some additions to this, but it's actually managed by our public operations team, and we build that collaboratively every year. When we're placing porta potties annually, we look at high density locations which have lots of gatherings of people. So more where our programmed locations are, where you got lots of sports fields with little kids. We put porta potties there, or where you're going to have large gatherings of people. We tend to put our porta potties there because we only have a finite budget for that. And that was a service standard that was developed by council. And so we do that location annually and locating of porta potties annually. And I would say that we just prioritize based on the number of porta potties that are in the budget. Mr. Saunders, I'm not sure if you have more to answer than that.
No, I might just add if we could possibly respond to a BIR to let this council know what that funding actually includes right now. And then if there was a desire to add more, then the appropriate request could be brought to us.
Thank you. I have no more questions at this time. With that, do we want to does anybody need a 5-minute break before we go to the last, which is 3.3 utilities? Yeah, okay, we'll take a quick 5-minute recess. I say we rock and roll here. Okay. Without further ado, we will move it back to Mr. Fletcher for our last presentation on utilities, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I will turn it over to Managing Director Operations yet again. Okay. Just want to make sure I have the right presentation up here. Last up for discussion is the utility services within the operations portfolio. Oops. The utility services and the city solid waste management services are managed through the Public Operations Department. The Utilities Division of the Public Operations provides essential water, wastewater, and stormwater services to the city of St. Albert. Key highlights include ensuring all customers have safe access to clean drinking water, protecting the environment and public health, providing the support during emergencies through their knowledge, experience, and training. Utility services also ensures that the city's utility infrastructure is developed and maintained in a cost-effective manner, consistent with the regulated safety and environmental standards. The solid waste management and diversion team is responsible for City of St. Albert's waste and diversion programs, inclusive of garbage, organics, and recycling collection. This team also provides for curbside collection, drop-off locations, and seasonal waste programs. The breakdown of the utility services budget can be found on page 95 of your budget document. This is a net zero budget, so any changes to expenses from year to year are matched with revenues of equal value. Some of the changes for 2026 are as follows. There is a 5.5 million increase in sales and user fees due to an increase in rates for water, wastewater, stormwater, and solid waste management. On the expense side, there's a $75,000 increase in salaries, wages, and benefits due to annualization of salaries. $381,000 increase in contracted and general services for finance, administration, and utilization of municipal resources. $4.584 million increase in purchases from other governments due to the projected increase in rates and volumes charged by Arrow Utilities for wastewater regional and conveyance and treatment, and the projected increase in rates and volume of water purchases from EPCOR. $404,000 increase in other expenditures for corporate contingency. The utility physical policy and rate setting model provides a methodology that clearly reflects the annual incremental costs of goods and/or services purchased, administrative overhead, and capital requirements for each of the 4 business units: water, wastewater, stormwater, and solid waste. The breakdown of the proposed monthly utility rates for a single-family residence can be seen on page 46 of the budget documents. I'm going to break this down a little bit. The proposed changes to the water rates are as follows. A $3.31 increase in the flat rate and a 7 cent per cubic meter increase in the variable rate due to the addition of new positions for both admin and operating, and the shifting of water loss from the flat rate to the variable rate. An additional 2 cents per cubic meter increase in the variable rate due to the increase in external costs of the EPCOR water rate. There is a decrease in the supplemental contribution of 37 cents owing to projected opening water reserve balance for 2026 being higher than the previous year. All the above results in a $4.38 increase in your monthly water bill for a typical single family residence. Moving over to the wastewater rates. There is a 73 cent
per cubic meter increase in the variable rate due to the external cost increase in the Arrow utility rates for wastewater regional conveyance and treatment. A 10 cents per cubic meter increase in the variable rate and a decrease to the supplemental capital contribution of $1.69 due to the shifting of the water loss adjustment to the variable rate from the flat rate. This results in a $11.59 increase in your monthly wastewater bill for a typical single-family residence. For the stormwater rates, there is a decrease in $1.80 due to the decrease in the supplemental capital contribution owing to the transfer of labor costs to water and projected revenue from the utility service connection fees. The proposed changes to the solid waste rates are a 25-cent increase in the solid waste flat rate and a 51-cent increase in the recycling. When you combine all the utilities and under the assumption of a 240-liter large-size waste cart and an average monthly usage of 16 cubic meters, the overall monthly rate has increased by $14.93, or this is a $12.98 increase from the 2025 blended rate of $163.51. This is a 7.9% increase. This concludes my presentation, and I have the Director of Public Operations and his team available to answer any specific questions.
We'll open up questions with Councillor Hughes.
Sure. So thank you for giving all that, but now we're going to need to go over it a little slower because my brain doesn't process even those numbers that quickly. So we were taking the water loss and we've changed it from the flat to variable. So I guess what was the thought process behind making that decision?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Saunders and his team to respond to that specifically.
Sure.
Thank you for the question. So through the mayor to Councillor Hughes, as we were looking, it does reside more in a variable rate, as that is where the actual water consumption is being calculated. There is the flat rate, there are the variable rates, and through the existing model, which was constructed in 2014, there had been different allocations of where the funds would reside. Because the actual consumption resides in the variable, that is where the loss is as well. Now, Regan is with us today and may be able to talk a little bit more about the water loss and the knowledge that we are gaining about what our water loss is in St. Albert.
That'd be helpful.
So thank you for the question, Councillor Hughes. Water loss is the difference between the amount of water we purchase and the amount of water that we sell. We're not hitting 100%, but we are doing pretty well. You look at municipalities across North America, we're sitting at around 4% water loss. Some municipalities are close to 20%. But both EPCOR and Arrow Utilities bill us based on the amount of water coming into the community. So the water loss is that 4% water loss. That's customers that are not paying for water, things like fires, things like water leaks, but it's also water meters that are not registering with 100% accuracy. So there's a certain amount of water that is not making its way into customer bills. So we need to increase the charges that we're getting from Arrow Utilities and increase the charges that we're getting from EPCOR to account for that water loss. And it's actually been a difficult thing for us to assess, and part of it is because we were incorporating it into the flat rates previously. It's with the water rate model, it's now been built in that the fact that we're selling less water than we're buying is now fully incorporated into the utility rate model with finance, which allows us to better project. Like when we see a rate increase of 70 cents from Arrow Utilities, we can project that that'll impact our customers by 73 cents per cubic meter.
So because we've already included this price, are we actually just going to bake that in every time there is a price increase as well? So it won't just, it's not like a flat, like it's just going to be perpetual. Yeah, it would be. so you don't have to answer, that's okay. The flat rate though still went up. So even though we've moved part of it over to variable, the flat rate for the water went up. So could you just, and if you already explained it, please forgive me. But could you just go over it one more time as to why it went up by about $3, 3.31? Because it should have gone down. So I'm just missing something.
Regan, go ahead if you're able to answer, and then we might defer
Okay.
to finance, who may be able to speak a little bit more about the model itself.
So this was a bit of a mystery to us as well, and we've gone through the salary working papers, and what it was is finance picked up that our VIP, our payroll management system was not directly linked with our salary working papers, which is how we think we're divvying up our staff between our three utilities, water, wastewater, and stormwater. They had done a different allocation within the payroll system, so that's been now acknowledged with the budget. But what happened is that has shifted positions. So 2.86 positions were moved away from stormwater, 4.38 positions were moved away from wastewater, and water gained a total of 8.37 positions, a net increase of 1.13 positions, because we've added in the last year here, we've added one labor position to our complement, and then there's just, with the different way we allocate between public works, we've gained an additional 1.13 positions as well overall. But it's a movement of those positions from the other two utilities to water. And it's something that we'll have a look at over the next few months, whether that allocation is correct. I expect we will probably move some positions back, but we didn't dig into it as part of the budget, because our water customers, our wastewater customers, and our stormwater customers are typically the same customer base. So it would just mean the flat rate for sanitary and the flat rate for stormwater will probably go up a little bit. I expect that's what we'll see next year when we do the budget, is we'll be moving some of that flat rate over to those. But that's why we're not seeing increases for wastewater, and partly why we're seeing actually a reduction in stormwater is we have moved positions away from those two utilities and moved them into water. So I hope that provides sufficient explanation.
Sure. So just for the new people who are like, what you talking about? What we did is we made sure that all of the employees, because sometimes it's like part of a public works person, not a full FTE, that's being attributed to utilities. And some of it would be obviously for regular city maintenance. And so the stuff that was for utilities, staff figured out what they were guessing is how many hours were being attributed. And then that's being put as FTEs just towards the utility rate. Okay. And so what they're also saying is they're changing it around, they think, a little bit. And so that's where they came in there. Now, following that up there, Regan, because it's good to see you. The stormwater, though, has not gone down. So you're telling me that we moved a couple of staff over from stormwater over to water, but the stormwater rates are identical.
It shows up in the supplemental capital contribution. That's part of how the supplemental, that we can't actually bring the flat rates down without coming to council according to policy, but we can reduce the supplemental capital contribution. So that's where you're seeing it there.
Okay. But you could bring it down for next year anyway, though. Like, this is what we're coming forward with. We're going to be setting them in stone for next year. So I guess, was it just because it's like $1.60 and this was the easiest way to do it, was through the SCC?
Well, ultimately the SCC is another flat rate that's charged, and it's being charged because there is so you'd say a deficit for your capital contribution. So they're both flat rates. The one that is it's the overflow flat rate that is being decreased because the flat rate is being held firm.
Okay. I see that now. So that's where the other staffing went. You took it out of the SCC as well for wastewater to make up for that. Because we took it out of the SCC for these, but then we put it into the flat rate on water. So, but that's how we did the juggling. Is that correct?
There's a lot of other things that go into it as well. It's also our where we're sitting at with our capital reserves for the three utilities as well. But yes.
Okay.
That has had a big impact, the movement of those staffing positions over to water within the payroll software.
Got it.
Correct.
So this is like a 2-second crash course for what we're doing with it, what the SCC is. But what we've done is we did a 10-year rolling capital plan, SCC, supplemental capital contribution. So it's a 10-year rolling plan of what we're going to need to have for infrastructure for utilities next 10 years. Because there's ebbs and flows. One year it's 44 million, the next year it's 8. So that was how we planned it out. And then from there, we take the total and then we figure out how much money we have coming in. And then the difference is what we were finding in the SCC. And what we've been able to do through doing that is keeping that contribution level fairly stable. And it does go up and down depending on major projects as they come on and off the books. But it has, with the exception of these other rate increases beyond our control, kept the rates actually quite stable for the past decade. So that being said, sorry, I'm sorry if I'm talking for you guys, but I just thought I'll just so that they don't get confused. But what I'm now wondering about is the variable rate for the wastewater. We had a massive increase, and Councillor McKay, you might be the one to help fill this in. I don't know who's going to be the one, since you were on Arrow, but I understand that the 7 cents increase for the lost water for that. And then of course we have to charge the same on the wastewater because we have to get billed based on consumption, not based on how much actually went down the toilet. So if you water your lawn, it still counts because we get billed that way. But the variable rate went up by a lot more than 7 cents. So can anybody just kind of shed light for all of our users as to why there's been a larger increase to the variable rate for wastewater?
Regan, if you want to start, and then I can fill in from the Arrow side, or Tim, sorry.
Sure, I'll start off. So Arrow Utilities, they have 300 kilometers of infrastructure, but what Arrow does is they provide the treatment for our wastewater. Our portion of our infrastructure is the transmission to Arrow Utilities. Arrow Utilities has that infrastructure that they need to maintain, and they're not immune to cost escalations and everything that is happening with the environment right now. So as the 2025 rates were being developed, there was consideration of the infrastructure needs at Arrow, and that is essentially what prompted the 70 cents increase per cubic meter that is charged to the municipalities. That's essentially what it is. It's based on infrastructure needs with Arrow.
I can supplement that a little bit for the rest of council and the new councils. our wastewater treatment goes to Arrow Utilities facility close to Fort Saskatchewan along the North Saskatchewan River. The unprecedented growth that we're starting to see in the area, combined with some of the complexity of the industries that are moving in, has really hit our board quite hard. So we did do a recent infrastructure review and found, like Tim has mentioned, that we have a significant infrastructure problem. And you combine that with all of the rising inflationary costs and some of the impacts of our debt financing, we had to look at the long-term sustainability of not only of our financial structure, but also our infrastructure needs. So we have gone through quite a reorganization, but we do need to make sure that, as the only wastewater treatment plant outside of Edmonton, and dealing with some of the complexities that we have because of industry, that it doesn't impact Edmonton. We needed to raise rates over the last 2 years substantially. The rate increase will put us in a better position going forward, and we shouldn't have such big cost impacts going forward. You'll see more like we used to have, that will be closer to inflation or cost of living increases. Sorry. It's just a reality that was impacting us. We could go into a lot of the reasons why we potentially didn't plan better in the past, but that's for other previous boards. And going forward, we are committing to looking at having a whole governance and financial review that'll look into our current practices and come back with best practices We also have some potential opportunities with some of the hydrogen that is being developed in the industrial heartland that may provide us with revenue opportunities, but that's not for several years. However, the board felt we needed to get our house in order. Otherwise, we risked massive infrastructure failure, which would basically break all of the municipalities financially because of just the massive costs associated with infrastructure repair, for lack of a better term. I can answer anything else specific if you need it, but fundamentally, we needed to raise rates to cover that.
So, Councillor Kai, thank you for that. So what I'm hearing is that, like, we've had the increases for 2 years, but
Yeah.
going forward, like, this is the worst of it, and going forward, it should be substantially less in the wastewater category. Is that correct?
Correct. I mean, you used to see rate increases just to cover the cost, just inflationary costs. And so you would see it in the 5 cent range. You'll start to see those things return next year.
And I thank you for that. And just so that, again, the public is aware, that rate increase, I'm not looking to you, Councillor Mackay's time. I'm going to look for one of the other two gentlemen at the bottom of the screen. Just to confirm that the rate increase that we're doing for wastewater is just a complete, we're going to call it a flow through. There's no additional increases, like, we're not increasing it on the city side beyond just literally our increase that we're experiencing from Arrow Utilities, correct?
There is a very small component in addition to that is just related to an administration fee that is on there in that particular fee as well, or that variable rate on the wastewater side.
So then it's literally, this is just, these are our costs and we're passing them on.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. Thank you for that. This has just been such a huge increase in the past couple of years, not just in wastewater, but in general. Like, I think our water bill was like 150 forever, and now it's up to 177 almost. And it's a hard hit for a lot of people. So I understand the difficulty we're having, but I think that at least we want to make sure the public understands exactly how we got to this point, especially this year. Thank you.
Councillor Clark for questions now, please.
My question is related to recycling. Is that a contracted service that or do we internalize that?
I'll ask Mr. Saunders and his team to step in.
Sure, and thank you for the question through the chair. Recycling is a combined service. So we have our curbside pickup that is completed by a contractor, but we also operate our Mike Mitchell Recycling Center, which allows for residents to recycle additional materials that aren't available to be recycled curbside. Now, within the last year, there is a program, the Extended Producer Responsibility Program from the province of Alberta, that shifts the liability and the burden of recycling of the certain materials to the producer of the material. Then it takes it away. So during 2025, we had a rate adjustment that significantly decreased our recycling rate because it was now being subsidized by the province. But there is still a component of our recycling that is over and above what the EPR program considers for their reimbursement. And that is what our recycling rate is based on.
And do we have the opportunity? I know through the winter, we continue with the recycling on a weekly basis, but we don't have the curbside organics or the garbage. Do we have the opportunity to pull back that service? It's a clean, dry product that we're picking up on alternate weeks as well. Would that be a significant savings doing that?
There could be. There would be a savings on curbside because it would be less pickup, but it might be just more pickup on the other scheduled days. But it is definitely something that we could pursue probably in a BIR. And it ultimately, it is a service level that is currently defined for the city.
I'm just wondering how much participation actually happens on those off weeks. I know on my own Crescent, I think out of the 12 homes, there's 2 that participate in the off weeks. So it seems to me that maybe where we're providing a service that's not being taken advantage of on those off weeks when there's not garbage and organics being picked up.
Maybe I could just jump in, Counselor, and I would say Mr. Saunders hit it on the head. That's some analysis to go into that. And so if you think that's a budget motion, that's fine. That actually might be an IR too, as you look at service levels more holistically would be my recommendation, because there's a fair amount of analysis to go into that.
Thank you.
I might just add on to that is that the contractor, it does have separate vehicles for what they provide. So it's not as though it's the same vehicle that is picking up both of those components at any given time, just for clarity.
Thank you.
There's a recycling vehicle and an organics vehicle.
Thank you very much for the questions. We'll go to Councillor Cortesh.
Oh, goodness. Thank you. One of my council colleagues told me earlier, the only stupid question is the one that doesn't get asked. And you guys can be the judge after these. Funded versus unfunded in utility. I don't see anything unfunded. Is that because everything's funded because we have to, and because it's that utility rate model where we need it. So it's funded. There's no unfunded capital.
There's projects in the RMR side that would remain in the unfunded till it comes forward. But I'd probably ask Mr. Saunders to step in terms of other projects that are capital funded to see if there is any.
Yeah, it's along the same philosophy as the growth. However, with the RMR, those are all life cycle type of projects that I think would have a little bit less latitude for sustainability if we deferred those and they were unfunded. So what does get brought forward in RMR is the need to complete projects to maintain sustainability and life cycling of the asset.
Okay, but I think to your point, from a growth perspective, right? Yeah, that's planned out and it's as needed and it's funded through the rate model.
Okay, so in the budget, the RMR is all funded because that's all. If we don't fund it, we start having problems. The growth. Are there unfunded growth projects? And maybe this leads into my next one. I'm looking at the utility growth capital plan, and it doesn't indicate that anything's unfunded. And then my next question was going to be the northeast servicing. And if you could point me to where I find that in here, is that set? Like, is there nothing in here for that, even in the 10-year growth capital plan?
That is a completely separate discussion. I would respectfully submit, no, it's not in there right now because it's not a thing. Yeah. Like it's a construct, but that's not in this budget.
Okay. And it would.
And then just to add to Mr. Fletcher's answer, you were asking if there's any unfunded growth utility charters. There isn't at this point, but if there is on us building out the city, that's considered not through this process, but through our offsite levy and that discussion. And then that's a separate discussion and prioritization of the offsite levy model and discussion of what the city would be front ending. And then that would come through on the municipal side.
And I don't mean that to cover the growth. The Northeast is not on the 10-year capital plan. It doesn't exist on the 10-year capital plan, which is why you don't see it in the budget.
Right. So it may be part of a different discussion around offsite levies. And is that, so it's been a long time. I don't exactly remember how offsite levies work, and is that not part of this budget? That's a separate discussion.
No, that's generally a separate discussion as we go through with the offsite levy bylaw that ultimately council will approve annually. And then ultimately there's a prioritization discussion to be had in the future.
Okay, thanks. Okay, now this again could be a dumb question here. 7.9% increase in utilities. Looking at the budget, looking at the revenue expenses, they zero out, but I can just pick out the line item there and say purchase from other governments. What's the biggest reason for that 7.9% increase? Is it the capital? Is it just the cost of Arrow utilities and water? Is it as simple as looking at that line item in the budget? Oh, that went from 17 million to 21 million at the cost of purchasing. I'm just trying to figure out where of that 7.9%, we got a nice breakdown of the 3.9% on the municipal side of kind of what makes up that 3.9, but on the 7.9, what makes up that 7.9?
So if I could give you a very high level number of what that looks like, the EPCOR water is about 2% of that. Our utilities is about 34.1%. And all other costs related to water, wastewater, solid, stormwater and solid waste utilities are about 0.9%. So.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's good.
Thank you, Councillor Cortesh. Can somebody just answer why we stopped taking single-use plastic in the recycling program?
Mr. Saunders?
Sure. Single-use plastics, I believe, are now part of the EPR program and have been, that's back into our program now as of April 1st, and then it will be brought into the multi-unit facilities in 2026.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Councillor Patrick?
Thank you. In our, excuse me. Right now, we're using Arrow. In our strategic plan, like St. Albert's predicted to grow in the next 10 years to, we'll reach 100,000 residents. Is that going to be adequate, or are we already in, is it in our strategic plan? I don't know what the wording is. Have an Arrow in St. Albert, like a space like that? I don't know what to call that, but.
I think I understand, and certainly, Alex and Tim can jump in here, but so Arrow, one of the reasons that was alluded to by Councillor Mackay for the rate increases, they've undergone a significant expansion in terms of their capacity to accept and treat wastewater, and so for the foreseeable future. External treatment or treatment through that party, of which St. Albert is a stakeholder, right? It's the member municipalities that form Arrow and make the board, is in our future. At what point in time do we cross a line where we would invest in our own infrastructure and run it? I don't know if there's that tear line that exists, honestly, for St. Albert, provided Arrow continues to sort of expand on that particular front. And so the short answer to your question is no, it's not in our strategic plan right now.
Okay, so Arrow would be okay for us to reach 100,000 residents. Okay, thank you.
Just so you know, Councillor Patrick, our recent renovation was $197 million on land that we already owned. There was a recent wastewater treatment plant in Lower Mainland, BC, and it's over $1 billion right now. So we have to, I just don't see a viable solution to go alone. In the region, it would just be way too expensive.
This might be off topic, but like Sturgeon County, Morinville, do they also use Arrow?
Yes, that's correct. They do. There's 13 municipalities going as far north as Bonaccord, Gibbons, Fort Saskatchewan, all of the industrial heartland, all of those industries that make up Fort Saskatchewan. Strathcona County is also included in there. The northeast part of Edmonton is included in there. Leduc County, Leduc, Beaumont, the airport, Spruce Grove, Stony Plain, and parts of Parkland County, particularly Atchison, and all the transfer sites going out west. So you can see the catchment area in the big area. So as Tim mentioned, we have hundreds of kilometers of wastewater pipe, and a lot of it is badly needing repair, as does some of our other infrastructure.
Okay, I don't believe there's any other questions, unless there's any other feedback from admin. I also don't believe we have any new budget information request or postpone motions. So with that, I will call for a recess.
I was going to ask, do we need to meet tomorrow?
No.
Because I'm asking everybody, because you were going to go for a recess, but I personally, I'm tapped out on questions, guys. I'm sorry. So I know you're like, I'm so disappointed. I wanted more from Sheena. But I personally don't have any questions that I can think of that are ready for tomorrow. So I'm just asking.
So I don't, unless any council has some questions they'd like to continue with tomorrow.
And I would mention, you could still obviously continue to submit BIRs.
Okay, so with that, we will call for a recess to December 1st at 9:30 a.m. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Sorry I wasn't there.